With cyber attacks on the rise, protecting your data security is more important than ever. So why is Congress considering a bill that puts your credit card data at greater risk of being hacked and exposed to foreign networks? The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill shifts billions in consumer spending to less secure payment networks, all so that corporate megastores can make bigger profits. Don't let Durbin-Marshall steal your data. Visit electronicpaymentscoalition.org and tell your senators to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill.
Provide unique light and energy so that you have the energy of the moon at night, and sometimes you've heard the word full moon, and sometimes you need to take the opportunity just to come out and see a full moon is that complete rounded circle, which is made up mostly of gases.
What?
And that's why the question is why or how could we as humans live on the moon? The gas is such that we could do that.
That's
why. The sun is a mighty powerful heat that is almost impossible to go near the sun.
Almost.
The moon is more manageable, and you will see in a moment, or not a moment, you'll see in a couple of years that NASA is going back to the moon.
Ladies and gentlemen, your attention, please.
Just a catching strays over here.
You're in for a hell of a show.
Keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs.
It's time for our main event.
Welcome back to the Ruthless Variety Program. That was Sheila Jackson Lee in all of her glory. We've talked about her before on the Variety Program. She's got some interesting staffer names, at least how she refers to them. But before we get into all of that, fellas, Josh Holmes, Comfortably Smug, Michael Duncan, John Ashbrook, as you're accustomed to. Down there on the end, for the first time on video medium, if you've come to our live events, you've known him very well. And we refer to him often, most often in a negative sense in terms of like what we deal with.
Yeah.
McDaniel, welcome.
How's it going, fellas?
How are you, pal?
It's just kind of weird, actually having to be, with the fellas on camera. Man, this is
it's something else.
This is a lot different than just writing it down, and now I have to actually say the words.
Well,
it's
I mean,
crazy.
so for those of you who are new listeners, McDaniel has done all of the content. He puts together the show sheet. He does a number of things behind the scenes. And again, if you're a part of our live events, you know how much it is that he does. This is the first time he's sitting on the dais. So you're getting a good look at this cat. Judge accordingly.
Yeah. I mean, actor, director, I honestly, we'll just start replacing all of you. It'll just be the McDaniel show at some point.
I think that's probably right.
I think that's probably fair.
I'm totally down with it at some level. Usually you hear about us talking about McDaniel because of some of the sourcing that he puts in.
Yeah, he loves using the fake news sites based off Lithuania. That's just word for
it's
word.
It's whatever's free.
Articles.
Study finds.
So DNYUZ is a legitimate news.
That is that is absolutely absurd.
It's run by our good friends, the Hungarians. No, it was actually it's easy to find because they take the New York Times, but they don't put it behind a paywall.
They steal it.
Well, they appropriate it.
Yeah,
that's right.
And you steal it from them,
which seems fair.
I mean, I like to source it, and so when I was sourcing a number of consonants, it brought some confusion. So there was that. And then he's the study finds guy.
Yeah,
study finds.
I feel like Holmes is working through some stuff right now.
Yeah,
because you're the one who has to read all the things.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at it and I'm like, where the fuck is this?
Hey, study finds is not the only source he uses when he's reaching for science.
Oh, you're right.
Sometimes penis.
Oh, we love penis. Everyone loves penis.
He's the whole reason we're using, and it's the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
It's very prestigious.
I love how Smug always does cleanup.
He does.
Well,
he's become a prude.
Yeah.
Well, there's families listening. And,
Smug used to love penis.
I want some feedback.
I've always hated them. Oh my God. I've always hated that segment.
McDaniel comes in off the top rope. But I'd like some feedback. I'd like it both in the comments, and I'd like on YouTube, on Twitter, send your reviews. Do we need to clean things up?
Yeah.
Do we need to? Because it seems like the folks who always have a point of view or the cleanup point of view, I'd like to hear from the other side. here a little
People
bit.
who are like, yes, say terrible things.
The
while I'm driving my
silent,
kid
the
home.
silent majority.
The silent majority. And believe me, we've done a lot of metrics on our audience, so I know who you are.
No.
And I know what you want.
They're driving their kids home.
I'd like you to say it.
The filthy majority.
That's right.
I'd like you to say it.
Yeah.
Okay, so back to the top, Sheila Jackson Lee. Jeez whiz.
Yeah.
She is, well, she's got I guess, sort of an understanding of space, the likes of which we haven't seen. It reminded us a lot of, what is his name, Hank, is it Johnson?
Yeah, from Atlanta.
The guy who said that Guam would tip over because of all of our tanks?
No, too much weight on one side of the island.
It would tip over. Yeah. That's basically her understanding of the sun and the moon.
Yeah.
It's mostly gases, which is a huge concern.
I like how she said that it's almost impossible. Almost impossible to go to the sun.
Yeah.
Almost impossible.
There's a way.
Hey, you know, like we're laughing about this and everything, but as somebody who, you know, finished his taxes recently, just the idea
Yeah, dude.
that like my tax dollars fund her salary
Oh.
is so offensive to me. It makes me want to be one of those guys in Ohio who drives with a paper license plate and is like, I don't pay taxes. You know what I mean?
Is she not also the person that was like the bitch ass, fat ass?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like the
hates
leaked
her
audio.
Very rude to her staff.
So what I really like about it is that she also gets to vote on NASA's budget too. Like I love it that she has a vote in that. Like, oh yeah, NASA. I just imagine a congressional hearing. Ma'am, no, we're not actually planning to go to the sun this year. We're going to try to go to the moon.
Oh, it's just incredible.
Yeah.
Well, it's made
No,
up
man.
mostly of gases. The moon.
The moon.
Never mind the fact that there's actually video footage.
Like, we
of
landed on it.
People standing on the rock.
Yeah.
Well, how else could I get there unless it's full of gases?
It's genuinely incredible. This is a person who has absolutely no business being anywhere close to the levers of power, and yet she is. And if you vote for a Democratic House majority, she's going to chair.
Science and technology.
Yeah.
Which is such insanity. Good God.
Americans for Prosperity has done it again. You're going to love this. Know how Biden's been running around the country bragging about Bidenomics? And the media's doing stories on how the president has embraced the term? Well, guess what? Americans for Prosperity just bought the Bidenomics.com domain name. I can't believe the White House didn't get this first. This would be like Pepsi buying Coca-Cola.com. It's hilarious. Bidenomics.com sets the record straight on the failures of Joe Biden's economy, his horrible record on cost of living, wages, debt, deficits, energy, and more. I've been to the site. I can tell you, it's not what Joe Biden wants Americans to see. AFP takes Biden's own words and compares them to the reality of everyday Americans. It's packed with facts and stories that prove Bidenomics is a costly failure. Americans for Prosperity deserves a lot of credit for this coup. Visit Bidenomics.com soon, the website Joe Biden doesn't want you to see.
Oh, so that's what we're dealing with in the variety program. You know, we've thought a lot about the way we handle things because, you know, Wolf likes meat up front. Mm-hmm. You know what a big fan of meat he is.
Yeah.
He's been a big fan of meat all the way through, and he keeps driving that. It's like meat.
We're done with that. You know what? This should be the Revolt show.
Now that we have all of us on one stage, we might as well just say fuck it. Let's
Yeah.
do something different.
I'm with it.
Oh, okay.
You know, but I mean, let's see how it goes. We'll give him a little bit of meat, and then we can kind of work through it.
Okay.
All right. But if this thing goes completely off the rails, you're welcome.
Yep.
For one, for two, it may be a harbinger of things to come. Because you listen, for those of you OG, you listen to the first couple years that we did on this show.
Yeah.
You listen back on that.
Well, it's fun.
It was all fun all the time. All fun all the time. We got a horny segment in here, McDaniel.
I mean, Smug cut it, actually.
No, we put
we
it
had
in.
a great one. We had a great
For
horny
God's
segment,
sake.
but Smug
There
just
are
completely got
families
rid of it.
listening.
No, I put it back in.
Oh, okay, good.
Don't you worry.
Smug
Don't
is
you
big
worry.
into censorship.
How do you say that in Spanish for that segment?
I think for those with families, we'll preview cojones. I think, right?
Cojones.
So you know,
Cojones. Yeah, that's right.
hit the pause as
Listen
you're
to
driving
you.
your kids.
Smug brought it up. We already won.
Smug, why did you do that?
Look at him.
All right, that's fine.
You're the filthy one. Clean things up. All right, so this is a fascinating story fascinating for all of the obviously reasons when we get into it. There is a guy, what's his name?
Uri Berliner.
Uri Berliner, who wrote a piece. What's thefp.com? What is that?
That's Barry Weiss's, the Free Press. I think Barry Weiss runs that.
Okay. So she, as you recall, was a former New York Times editorial columnist, part of the editorial board, resigned during COVID because she thought she wasn't, she knew that she was being completely censored by her point of view and everything else, and has been sort of an outspoken critic of the media ever since. She's hosted this cat to write a piece entitled, "I've been at NPR for 25 years. Here's how we lost America's trust."
And folks, this is really worth a read.
It is.
It is. It's heartbreaking, and it's all true.
It is heartbreaking. So he starts it by saying, "Today, those who listen to NPR, read its coverage online, find something different, the distilled worldview of a very small segment of the U.S. population. If you are conservative, you will read this and say, duh, it's always been this way. But it hasn't. Back in 2011, although NPR's audience tilted a bit to the left, it still bore a resemblance to America at large. 26% of the listeners described themselves as conservative, 23% as middle of the road, 37% as liberal. By 2023, the picture is completely different. Only 11% described themselves as somewhat conservative, 21% as middle of the road, and 67% said they were very or somewhat liberal." He's right in that my initial reaction to the opener that he comes up with is like, yeah. Yeah, that's what we've been talking about since the first day of Ruthless, right? Is that the migration of coverage has tilted so far left, and therefore that's where the audience is. No question about it.
It's one thing for us to say it ad nauseum. It's quite another to hear it from somebody who's been on the inside for an entire career. This guy's credentials cannot be questioned. At the beginning of the piece, he talks about how he grew up as the son of a lesbian freedom fighter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this guy grew up liberal, he careered liberal, and now he's explaining the shortcomings of an institution that we've all wondered what happened. You know, and there's a line in this story, I'm not sure it made it into the notes, but it's something I think is very important. It sort of underscores one of the first sentences you read. And he writes, "I looked at voter registration for our newsroom. In D.C., where NPR is headquartered and where many of us live, I found 87 registered Democrats working in the editorial positions and 0 Republicans.
Good God.
None." And this is a point that we make on this show often, that if you have a newsroom entirely stocked with people of one political persuasion and 0 people from another political persuasion, the information you provide is going to be biased and useless to the people who are trying to consume it.
Yeah.
It's no wonder why it's gone off the rails.
And that's the thing. So a lot of attention was being given to this online, specifically for a couple instances that are in here. One that he gives is persistent rumors that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia over the election became the catnip that drove reporting. At NPR, we hitched our wagon to Trump's most visible antagonist, Representative Adam Schiff. Like, that's the thing, is they saw that, hey, we do not have concrete evidence for this, but if it gets, our side juiced, we're going to run with that. And then further damning is when he says Russiagate was not NPR's only miscue. In October 2020, the New York Post published the explosive report about the laptop Hunter Biden abandoned at Delaware computer shop containing emails about his sordid business dealings. With the election only weeks away, NPR turned a blind eye. And he went further and said that there was a discussion of how to cover this. I guess it was within the company's Slack. And someone said, well, this would hurt Joe Biden. And everyone just agrees, yeah, that's what we should
but not
care.
only that, but he characterized the person as saying that as one of the more fair-minded journalists in the bunch.
So the center is well, we've got to help Joe Biden here.
Yeah.
They're like, you centrist.
which goes back to the problem of 87 Democrats, 0 Republicans. We live in a country where 50% of the people are Democrat, 50% of the people are Republicans, and inside of these newsrooms there are political arguments. There always are. It's just natural. It's real. So let's not pretend there aren't. If the political arguments are among all Democrats, the argument's going to sound a lot like a Democrat primary race for president, where everybody's getting to the left of everybody, and there's one centrist maybe. But like, if you have half of the newsroom as Republicans, the argument's going to sound a lot more like the rest of the country. And I just feel like this is one of the major areas. I'm so glad he put this in the story. I'm honestly so glad he wrote it. I hope there are a lot of reporters out there who read this and say,
well, you know,
Ich
there
bin
are.
ein Uri Berliner.
So I got a quick question. Got a quick question for you. How much money does NPR get from the government?
Well, I mean, that's a good question.
So my big question is
More than any of us.
Well, they're constantly pushing for, fairness. You need DEI, or you need, X percentage of people need to be a certain, type for flip. Well, they're getting federal money. Shouldn't they have to have a mandatory, Republican on staff, or at least 87-1?
Well, to that point, just on the DEI side, I thought this was really interesting. This is, to me, like amongst the most interesting, because we're talking about, again, a publicly funded airwave. Race and identity became paramount in nearly every aspect of the workplace. Journalists were required to ask everyone we interviewed their race, gender, and ethnicity.
Good God.
Amongst other questions. And had to enter it in a centralized tracking system. There's an unspoken consensus about stories we should pursue and how they are framed. It's frictionless. One story after another about instances of supposed racism, transphobia, signs of the climate apocalypse, Israel doing something bad, and the dire threat of Republican policies. It's almost like an assembly line.
Mm-hmm. I just kind of imagining, if the Trump administration were to have put like a repository together with that information, it would have he'd have been impeached for the third time. Yeah. Whereas when the Democrats do it, it's enlightened, and it's making way for disadvantaged groups.
Well, I think that's the point there, McDaniel, that leaves me most conflicted in this story. Because I love that this guy admits what we all knew, but it's not a drift. And we've talked about a lot on the show, right? That when we got into this line of work and this, you could do business with these people. You knew they were liberal. They didn't share your worldview, but ultimately it was about informing the public, and they would take your quote or they would take part of the story, and you could fight for a fair article. Mm-hmm. They done it deliberate.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's not a drift. Mm-hmm. They done it deliberate. Mm-hmm. A tracking system for which people get what points
it's insane.
In the pyramid of progress.
I'm telling you, I know people who work there and have worked there and are very Smug, just for 1 second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Very professional. Who were passed over for opportunities because they didn't fit the bill.
And that's sad.
And that is the real problem.
I think of it like, we talk a lot about on the show because we've had experience in our field of work that we talk about consistently. And we've always overemphasized where you learn and the community in which you've grown up, in how you do your job. And it's no different in finance. It's no different in if you're an accountant or if you're a construction person or an engineer or a doctor. Where you learned your craft is incredibly important to your worldview that you use to apply your craft going forward. Now, there can be a moment of clarity, as there was with this guy. But overall, you're dealing with people who come on the line of work in journalism at 24 or 25. They're just outside of college. And you get sent into the middle of that snake's den where you have to track the race of the people that you're interviewing rather than the story. Mm-hmm. That's not journalism.
No.
Right? But what happens is these people progress in their careers. And you take a little piece of that with you. Mm-hmm. It's why it's like in politics and where I grew up, if you got involved in a really bad office as a 24 or 25-year-old staffer where there was backbiting and territory disputes and people weren't trying to help each other, they were trying to tear each other down, you learned all the wrong lessons and you wash out really, really quickly. In journalism, you don't wash out. It just perpetuates, right? And so we're now on I would argue like year 10, because I think it predated Trump, of a journalistic community that has emphasized things like this. Maybe not to this extent, maybe not like...
I mean, we had that whole Journo list thing that happened when Obama was running.
That was 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
You know? Like, this has been going on for a long time.
And I get, like, you know, look, the Journo list, which for our audience, what that was basically a DM list where people that were all left of center had a running list with a bunch of journalists.
It wasn't just left of center. It was Ashbrook's friend Dave Weigel was on there.
Well, no, that's my point. The second part of what I was going to say was...
And he was what, a Coke associate or something? Like, he was supposed to be the libertarian guy?
Well, my point was that the second half of it was with journalists who cover the media on a day-to-day basis. And so the implication, obviously, is that they're in on this running conversation with the left to try to cover and do their day jobs. Mm-hmm. That got blown up and everybody was exposed at some level. But there was ultimately, like, I don't fault a journalist for trying to get information from the left to figure out what their day-to-day thought is. But if you don't counterbalance it with the right, you're not doing your job. And I think what we're seeing from a cultural standpoint, at least in terms of what this guy is saying, is that the right doesn't exist.
Do you have any idea how much worse it's going to get? Like, think about the segment that we covered on the last episode about how, you know, local journalism has been hollowed out by this Arabella Advisors, dark money web of left-wing groups that are replacing local news with all these fake news sites. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but some of the best journalists I know in print, you know, over the last 10 years, like, came up working at, like, the Ohio Dispatch, right? Or, like, some local paper, and then they came in to cover national news and stuff like that. And they did it the gritty way and the hard way of, like, chasing down stories, you know, in their community, and then they got a shot, right? But, like, what's going to happen when the bench of American journalism is entirely occupied by left-wing activists who work for a dark money organization?
They're going to do it the gritty way or the hard way by taking a pitch from a Dem candidate for Senate and writing it.
Copy paste.
And then accepting the pat on the back.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to be the bad guy to Ashbrook's friends here.
What a brave and courageous stand.
You know,
on Ruthless.
Guy from,
what a brave and courageous
very
stand.
The guy from Maryland. Let's hear it.
There should be an article in the Baltimore Sun tomorrow about how I appeared on the show. No, I'm just really concerned that Herr Berliner is a hero for coming out and saying this, and like Barry Weiss is a hero. Yeah, they're great. That's terrific. Where the hell are the other 99.99% of people who are in this environment who don't have the moral courage to stand up and say...
Well, it's not just the moral courage. Here's the thing that you need to understand is not everyone, a huge majority of people that operate, certainly in the Democratic C4 world, are like Fail Sons that have a safety net the likes of which you couldn't even imagine, right? They're like going to take a day off and go on the yacht. There are an awful lot of these journos who get into the business because they actually want to do the job, and then they're subjected to this culture. And the point is a 23-year-old person entering the workplace, and I don't care if you're in finance or whatever, but if you're in politics and you're in political journalism, what we've seen is these people's, your mind, your framework of how you do your job is entirely reliant upon the directives that you get from the people who sign the front of your paycheck. They really are. And so if you learn that over a period of time, you then apply that going forward, and that's how journalism gets to the left. And it's going to get, you're right, it's going to get worse. Mm-hmm. It's going to get worse because of what we've seen with the advent of fake news and everything on the left-hand side of the map. But I guess my distinction is these aren't inherently bad people.
I think
some of them are extremely
They're bad people. They're bad folks.
My point is that if you take any 22, 23-year-old anywhere in this country and subject their livelihood to doing business one way, they're going to do it. So they're going to do it.
It is true. Like 100%. There are plenty of journalists you wouldn't believe that listen to this show, and they're listening to it right now.
Yeah.
And they are extremely frustrated that they are being pigeonholed by some editor with a left-wing agenda that they have to write a story from a certain angle. And that is the nature of news today, unfortunately.
It is.
But a lot of these folks are staring down the barrel of layoffs already.
Yeah, that's my point.
They're going to kill the 23, 24, 25-year-old. They're going to keep the person who's been there for 25 years. Like Taylor Lorenz is still at the Washington Post.
Yeah.
Right. Like they're going to keep the person who is the activist in Slack, but you who is trying to do the beat journalism as the 24 or 25-year-old is going to get the axe.
Yeah. Unless you follow the directives to a T.
But is it the problem? I mean, you guys have talked about it before. Like, is left-wing journalism is just not profitable on some level, and is the business model collapsing to such an extent that maybe you will get more people who
Johnny,
will
what do you
speak
think?
out?
The business model of left-wing journalism is as such. Billionaire decides he wants to shape the opinions of the American people, strokes a gigantic check, and there you have liberal journalism. There's no business model beyond that.
Yeah, it's entirely patronage.
Journalism has always had a pseudo patronage model. I mean, for in a lot of ways, and you could read all about this
all the way back to the Federalist Papers.
But when it comes to,
I mean, for real,
when it comes to liberal journalism, it's that way in spades. And one of the reasons it's flourishing is because there is so much money on the left wing. We talk about this on the show. We talked about it Monday. We talked about it Monday night. $1.5 billion being written to States News through Arabella Advisors. What is the conservative side doing to answer that challenge? I think that's really one of the greatest questions that wealthy conservative donors have to face right now.
Because we can do all these shows. I mean, your point is exactly right. We can do all these shows and point out, and they all identify with. They're all like, yes, that is correct. But the end of the day, somebody still signs the front of the paycheck.
Right. Like what we need is some conservative billionaire to start a publication that basically like takes all of these good journalists in the same way that like Cuban dissidents got on a raft and came to Florida and like give them an outlet where we can do real news.
For as little as $3 billion a year. Conservatives. Struggling conservatives.
In the arms of an angel. I mean,
that's right. That's the thing. Is like Pod Save
as little as $3 billion.
Like Pod Save America got money
up
from Soros.
Right.
Like they have built an infrastructure.
Can you imagine what this podcast would sound like if somebody stroked us $100 million contract?
Great.
It
would sound amazing. It'd be so much better.
Smug,
Listen, you hear some shit.
You'd be on an island somewhere.
100%.
Yeah.
We'd have to do it abroad because I think there would be people coming for us.
That's probably true.
All right, so we got a whole lot coming up, but I do want to do a Hack Madness update right off the bat. This is a barn burner. Yeah. The fact that we are in a championship game, we've done this for 5 years. For 5 years, we've had one hanger to hang our coats on, and it was Jen Rubin.
Yep.
And now we have something totally different.
That's right, folks. So we had the Final Four. Voting has concluded for the Final Four. Jen Psaki defeated Philip Bump 73-26, and we had Keith Olbermann beat Taylor Lorenz.
Shocker.
54-46.
Really is.
Can I be honest? I'm disappointed. Because, look, there's no question that Keith Olbermann is the most offensive voice on the left.
He got hot at the right time.
Yeah.
But he's got fire from every platform. Like, he's literally just, like, screaming into an empty barrel every day. And so, like, the idea that he can compete with the likes of Taylor Lorenz, who is a Washington Post platform journalist, is crazy to me. I understand why people voted for it, and I'm not criticizing the listeners. I'm just saying I don't see it. I feel like that was a last minute from the opposite court. Like,
that's the thing is it was a total upset. Like, you know, we had thought it would be like a Jen Rubin, Taylor Lorenz, you know, championship round. But at the end of the day, it's the people voting who decide. And as you're hearing this, folks, the championship game will be underway. You can vote. You go to my Twitter profile, Comfortably Smug, on Twitter, on X.
It's Lorenz Psaki?
No,
it's Keith
Olbermann.
Olbermann.
Olbermann Psaki?
It's Olbermann Psaki.
Yeah, so we get a new champion.
It'll be a new champion no matter what.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean, who do you like?
So I don't have any bias in this. I just think that you have two people. The idea is Psaki, who essentially went from being, an employee of the White House to employee of MSNBC.
Her
in
job
5
title
minutes.
didn't change.
No, she's
Like
doing the same
where
job.
she goes to work changed.
Yeah,
But she does
her
the same
parking
thing.
spot changed, but her job description and what she does on a daily basis didn't change. And that's opposed to someone like Keith Olbermann, who just got hot at the right time. He said something crazy about how his tears are urine, made himself look like an absolute fool. But like that's part of the thing is you just get hot at the right time.
So that's what it is. I mean, you have a view?
Yeah, I mean, kind of back to your point, Holmes. Like, I think on the merits and the platform, you would say Psaki, right? But on a crazy factor, you might go with Olbermann.
Yeah.
And so ultimately, that's the decision for the voters, and I respect the will of the voters.
Oh, you're
unlike you, apparently, who I think maybe.
Oh, it's not about respect. Well, I might Jan 6 this thing.
You got
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
Yes.
I'm not saying. I'm just saying.
Do the right thing, Holmes.
I'll have the courage, Big Daniel. I'll have the courage. Johnny, you're the resident expert in this line of work.
I took Psaki simply because she made fun of people from Virginia who said that they're worried about immigration and the crime
right,
that results.
yeah.
And that was famous.
Got hot at the right time.
I think that because of that, I think she's going to win.
And just so everybody knows, internally here, we've got a pool going. Smash, not surprisingly, winning the pool.
Yes.
You have to pay
You had a
attention.
horrible year, Duncan. I mean a horrible.
Well,
You got to pay attention to what the audience wants. That's what I recommend. Just spending the next year
what,
sort of
Ashbrook?
going through the audience,
You
thinking
know what,
about
Ashbrook?
the audience.
Shut up.
Just
Okay?
1 year.
That's
1 year
not-
is all you got to do. Next
No,
year
that's
you'll
not
be
what
better.
happened. That's
What happened, Michael? What happened?
what happened. What happened in my bracket is similar to the thing you were mentioning earlier about like
The ones who
Taylor
deserve it.
Lorenz, right? Like
The ones who deserve it versus the ones who are most likely to captivate a larger audience.
I mean, my bet in here, and it was a Hail Mary. My bet was that Mika would go deep, even that she was in a 16 seed.
it's not a bad theory.
I thought, dude, have you watched Morning Joe? It has become the most unhinged show in America, and it's a morning show.
Yeah.
Like people haven't even had their coffee yet, and it's like they are like freebasing crack cocaine over there. And so I thought that was my skeleton key to top of the internal pool that we have is like, all right, I'm going to put Mika in to go deep, a deep run. Sort of like a what was the Golden Retrievers?
yeah.
University of Maryland.
University of
UMBC.
Maryland,
UMBC,
Baltimore
yeah.
College.
Yeah.
County.
The Golden
County.
Retrievers.
Yeah.
Baltimore
yeah.
County.
So she was my Golden Retriever, and look, it didn't work out, and so that's hurt me because I've lost points every round because she wasn't in my final four. So
Well, you have an abysmal score. Are you going to apologize for that?
I'll never apologize. I've never apologized, and I don't intend to start today.
All right, so we got a lot coming up for you. Bad news, obviously, for Joe Biden, but there's some specifics that we're going to get into that you will not believe. Democrats in the Senate have decided to ignore the Mayorkas impeachment. Here's the thing. We're not going to talk about this today because I think this actually plays out next week in a lot of different ways, but you ought to be aware of it.
Yeah.
We've got some variety, fellas.
I
We're
love
just going to
variety.
get it. We're going to work through some variety, and then we're going to play a game. We're going to play a game.
Sounds terrific.
But we also have two great interviews. Brett Gardner from the Americans for Prosperity will drop by. He's going to peel back the curtains on problems with our political landscape.
There's many.
And you guys did that interview. I hear it's an absolute banger. Also, Russ Walker and Jack Melton. And I listened to this interview. Whew, you're going to want to tune in. There's a lot of stuff there. They've written a book about talking about the inside story of the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And they actually have stuff that you have never, and I mean never, heard before. You got to get into that, too. That'll be the back end of our show today. With all that being said, we want to get to our sponsor, here for today. Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics. So if you haven't done Z-Biotics, I love it. I'm a huge fan of this thing. And Smug, I'm pretty sure that you're a fan of it.
Yeah, so I'm angry at them. So they sent us free samples, and
let's explain first of all what they do. It's basically like something you take before a big night.
Yeah, you take it before you drink, and you feel better the next day, and it works like a charm, right?
Yeah.
So they sent it. I love it. They're like, try this out, and it works terrific. And they have not sent more. And I keep telling, and I say to Wolf every time I come by,
They just gave you a taste.
how does the Z-Biotics come through? So Z-Biotics, if you're listening,
We need more.
4 wasn't enough, dude.
We're not going to moderate our behavior.
Yeah.
Send more of the Z-Biotics.
And that's the crazy thing. So it
as
actually,
the lawyer, Mr. Smug's take does not represent the views of the Ruthless Program, who loves Z-Biotics and take it quite often.
it worked. They just won't send more.
Yeah.
Duncan, what do you?
I'm sorry. I can't get over the fact that we're doing an Oppo hit on our sponsor right now.
Well, they're terrific.
They
Just
are terrific.
Send a lot
But
more.
that is, just for our audience, I mean, like, that speaks to our dedication here to our advertiser today. We actually do enjoy this product so much, we ran out of it.
Well, it's authentic.
It is authentic.
Well, here's the thing.
It's
It's
actually
authentic.
really good.
Not
It
only,
works.
not only is it authentic, it's developed by a PhD. So Smug, have some respect.
Yeah.
No, like
Send
show
more.
this. Show this.
There's nothing wrong with the
scientist.
PhD.
Look,
It's the shipping guy.
Smug doesn't trust. Smug doesn't trust the science, but I do.
Yes.
And that is, people think, like, when you do feel bad after a big night, that it's dehydration, and of course, you should stay hydrated. But that really isn't the issue. The issue is that alcohol is turned into a toxic byproduct in your gut, and then Z-Biotics makes an
takes care of
enzyme.
that?
Yeah, an enzyme that takes care of that whole thing.
Is that what the science is
That's
behind
the
it?
science.
Well, I'm telling you, it works.
Yeah.
It definitely works because I have felt a million times better. So for vacations, weddings, birthdays, and reunions, we got a lot going on here in the spring. So you got to get the most out of the spring plans by stocking up on the pre-alcohol, as they call it. Pre-alcohol now. You go to zbiotics.com/ruthless and get 15% off of your first order. Use Ruthless at the checkout. Z-Biotics, backed by 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, let's head to zbiotics.com/ruthless and use the Ruthless code at the checkout for 15% off. Thank you for Z-Biotics for sponsoring this episode and our good times.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
fellas?
Yes.
It really is great.
All right. So we're going to play a game. This has become a fan favorite.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's one of my favorite. I just love this so much. Where we have two contestants, and today it's going to be Duncan and Ashbrook. Correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Where we give you an identity, and we have a comms director that gives you the message that you're supposed to push, and then a journalist that asks you a question unrelated
Yeah.
to the question. And we call it hard pivot.
It's a fan favorite.
And what's so fascinating about it, and the reason we have it in our whole lexicon, is because you see this on TV every day, and it's like every politician does it to a greater degree, and the good ones can do it seamlessly, the bad ones do it abruptly.
Yeah.
But either way, it is completely hilarious how they process this.
It's
whole
like
thing.
they're going to get asked about the border, and they'll say, well, that's the thing is, so my book comes out next week. You know, like,
right.
they do the hard pivot.
Yeah. The politician who, like, no matter what the question is, finds a way back to the talking point that the comms director said right before the camera turned on and said, you have to say this.
Yeah.
They find a way, and it's magical sometimes.
It's basically why every American hates everything that they see in live television.
Yeah.
But the good ones don't make them hate it.
Yeah. So we're going to make fun of it.
So we make fun of it. That's what we do here. I'm the comms director, so I'm going to tell you what it is that we need to say.
Okay.
And Wolf, remind me, do I do this first?
Yeah, give him the pivot first.
I give you the pivot.
Okay.
All right. So, Duncan,
Okay.
you're a senior House Democrat.
Okay.
And the pivot is opposition to DEI is racist.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
McDaniel is the journalist, and he's going to ask you a question on that point.
Okay, so I've got a bonus point, right?
And then you've got a bonus point in your hands of something that you can work in during the course of your discussion that can allow for an additional, and Smug will judge all of this about whether or not you've worked that into a point where you get a bonus point. Okay, so let's go to the journalist's question.
I'm sorry, one clarification. I'm a House Democrat.
You are a senior House Democrat.
Okay, and I have to, and my pivot again is to why opposition to DEI is racist.
Racist.
Okay.
Congressman Duncan, it's really good to see you.
Yeah, pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you for taking this time to talk to us here at TrumpWorld.net.
Of course.
We're the biggest up-and-coming blog on the right, but we're dedicated to the truth. I hope you are too. Today's latest inflation report shows that things are getting worse, despite the Fed raising rates repeatedly. Isn't this evidence that so-called Bidenomics, which is letting immigrants flood our borders and taking away lives of unborn children, is not working for Americans?
Son, what was the outlet you said you were with?
TrumpWorld.net.
Yeah, so you Trumpers, you MAGA extremists want to pit Americans against each other? You want to pit immigrants against naturally born Americans? And, you know, that just makes me upset, son. What I think is that while you're dividing this country, Joe Biden's trying to unite it. I think that it's part of this culture of disinformation that you and blogs like yours spew all over the internet. In fact, I have a new book on the subject, Tickle the Truth, Avoiding Cringe in the Battle Against Disinformation. And there's a lot of disinformation in our culture today, son. Part of it's over DEI, where you got people like you, racists, trying to divide Americans, trying to divide immigrants, trying to divide people in this country against each other. And I don't take kindly to that.
Well done. Well done.
That's a strong showing.
My only objection, just for the court, is the Southern accent by which
the only way I could be a Democrat was to be a Southern Democrat.
Yep. That was fair.
There are no such thing. So, okay, here we go. Ashbrook, you're a spokesperson for a prominent conservative think tank.
Okay.
Your pivot is the importance of a 10% flat tax to grow the economy. 10% flat tax to grow the economy, and you are a think tank spokesperson. Okay?
And of course, Ashbrook has his bonus point.
And then he has the bonus point out in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mr. Journalist.
Mr. Ashbrook, let me get it real close, from NPR.
Yes!
You are the spokesman for a prominent conservative think tank that's taken a lot of criticism these days, and I'd like to ask you a question for our drive time audience. Donald Trump, the former president, recently called Chick-fil-A, quote, the Lord's chicken, and is selling Bibles that have been modified to include the lyrics to Lee Greenwood's God Bless the USA. Now, a lot of our audience might not be familiar with that, but it is a prominent song played at MAGA rallies.
This question is unbelievable.
From a conservative worldview, do you think that these actions are appropriate for a Republican presidential candidate and the future leader of the free world? Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on the show today. I'm very glad that you invited me on NPR for this, your final interview before President Trump is elected president and defunds your entire station. What I would like to point out to you NPR, is that although you mock the Bible, although you mock the Word of God, that President Trump is selling the God Bless the USA Bible on sale now at godblesstheusabible.com. I will tell you, NPR, that if you turn to Joshua 24:15, it says, choose this day who you're going to serve. And if you ask President Trump, he will say, as for me and my house, I will serve the Lord.
Oh my God.
Donald Trump will win this election, and he will pass a flat tax to make this country accessible for people who don't have the ability to afford Ernst & Young and very fancy accountants. A one-page flat tax is the kind of thing that people can rely on year after year. It's the kind of thing that you don't need $86 billion to spend on the IRS to enforce. And you can set it at 10%, and people can afford that, including you, NPR, once your station has been defunded. Thank you for the question.
God, that was just the insertion of the biblical verse.
I mean, that was so impressive.
Oh.
Like that. This is the tough thing: is both of them were very good.
My one criticism here of
do
of
you
the
get
team-
a criticism?
Well, I just want to say one thing.
I did laugh.
Well, no, his pivot was in the question.
Oh, that's a good point. Take it up with Wolf and Spiats.
I mean, it seems sort of rigged by the production team
Wolf,
here.
did you rig it?
No comment.
There was a
rigged.
rigging.
It feels a
he
little
didn't
rigged.
comment.
Yeah,
So
so
he
here's
took the fifth on the whole thing.
This is a good point. So I was going to go with Ashbrook, but because it was rigged, the fix is in. The winner is Duncan, folks. Outstanding
really
attempt by both.
Talk about rigging it.
But it was rigged.
Guy works the inside.
No,
It was-
I didn't.
It was rigged.
Look, I'm pointing out a fact.
I thought my answer was very funny.
Well, nobody-
I don't
nobody-
need
it
a
was
judge
funny
to
and it
tell
was
me.
great.
Nobody asked me about tickle the truth, avoiding cringe in the battle against disinformation.
I will say, had I been judge, the biblical verse
That
would
was
have
a really
thrown me
nice-
over the top.
That was really
I mean,
nice.
that's what sealed the win for him until I found out that Wolf rigged it.
Yeah.
Well, Wolf did some rigging, and he's not above that.
Yeah. Take it up with Wolf, Ashbrook. You did a great job. You did your job. Wolf just rigged it.
It was a rigging. It's out of your hands, Smash. It's out of your hands.
Well, until next time.
You know, we're all golf fans, and the Masters this weekend is the official kickoff to not only spring and summer, but golf season. We did this last year, and we're doing it again. See this lid? This is a lid that you have to have. It is a special Ruthless golf hat. You got to get it. It's up on the store right now. Seriously, go to the store. We sold out in 4 hours last year. Get on it, look at it, love it. When it arrives, I promise you, you're not going to be disappointed. Ruthless hat on the store. Go. All right, boys. I got to tell you, it's my favorite game.
It's terrific.
We've evolved over time. We do different things. You know, like the Never Trumps component to our games was like super hot, and we're migrating towards like the insanity of something like Hard Pivot. I love it.
It was a great game, and I'm very glad to have won. I noticed that John Ashbrook has vacated the studio.
Yeah,
in protest of his loss.
Yeah, he's upset. He's upset.
Well, I've heard though that there might be more games, new games cooking.
Yeah.
Maybe.
We do have.
I don't want to break any news.
We do have a lot of ideas.
Look, the guy comes on the show and he wants to break news.
I've just heard.
No, I mean,
I'm
just
sitting in Ashbrook's seat.
Guy
now,
shows
so
up for 5 minutes, all of a sudden he's
Sure.
rewriting the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Okay, so with that, we're going to go to an interview from AFP, which is fantastic. Brent Gardner. It's you did the interview, Michael.
Yeah, from AFP.
Fantastic.
He heads up all their government relations. Guy's got a lot of insights.
Let's go right to it.
I want to welcome to the program a great friend and great sponsor of the Variety program. Brett Gardner is the Chief Government Affairs Officer and Senior Vice President at Americans for Prosperity. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, before we get into all the serious topics and what's going on in Washington, I've heard you brought a gift for us.
I did actually.
We love tribute.
I did. Well, let me start with this. I don't know if you guys have had these before.
This guy knows what that is.
These are Oliva cigars, and there's actually a great tie-in to our organization on this. So I don't know if you guys know who Jose Oliva is, who is the founder of Oliva Cigars. But he's an amazing entrepreneur, and that's where the story starts. You know, his family was touched by communism, and it really, I think, drove him from a very young age. He kind of put it all into it, and became an entrepreneur, built an incredibly successful business, but was nowhere near done yet. He then went on to run for public office, and he became the Speaker of the House of Florida, I think 2 speakers
Wow.
ago. And if you guys, I'm sure you know, Florida's had a really incredible political experience over about the last decade. And he was the kind of legislator, politician, elected official and statesman that we really want to have in this country. He was so great, in fact, that AFP invited him to be on his advisory council. And, not only does he have, I think, a really strong principled stance on a ton of stuff, but boy, does he make a great product. So I thought you guys would enjoy this. Those are the Melanio Series Vs. That was one of their top cigars. I think it was Cigar of the Year a few years ago, but great entrepreneur, great American, strong conservative.
So he's a Cuban American.
He is not.
He's
he is
not?
an American of Cuban descent.
Wow.
And I think he would probably draw that distinction.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I bring it up is like, sort of in the cigar community, especially in a place like Florida, you run into a lot of stories like that. I just know because my dad's a big cigar smoker. He goes to Cigars in Sarasota, and the guy George there, that owns the place. They have the boat or raft, I should say, that his family came over from Cuba on. So, those are the sort of people in Florida that can tell you an incredible story about, what life is like under communism, you know?
Yeah, and I think most of Jose's life really has been here, but clearly his family was colored by it from the experiences that they'd had. And then, really, I think he would say that that's where it started. But in the many conversations I've had, the experiences that he's had ever since about this being a land of opportunity really is inspiring to him. And it's one of the reasons why we have him on our advisory council, because, he's one of those folks who got elected, didn't forget what he said during his campaign, and actually went out and did it. And the people of Florida are better off for it. So,
man, that's awesome. And what a terrific gift. Nobody's brought us cigars before. The old man is a little bit of an aficionado on cigars. Yeah. He doesn't know as much about buffalo wings. And since we have a true son of the city of Buffalo, who knows the difference between a great wing and a good wing.
Okay,
what I'm hoping you could do is help educate him on what to look for.
Look, all I'm going to say my defense here is that I know that you are a buffalo wing connoisseur, and I mentioned one of the wings that I like in DC is at Shelley's, which is a great cigar bar here locally. They make a campfire wing, which isn't a buffalo wing, I understand. And I'm hoping you can illuminate the difference and my mistake here for the audience.
Well, actually, I was pretty surprised. During our brief conversation before this, you had some of the stuff right. It's about the oil temperature. It's about how much you cook it, as much as it is about getting the right wing sauce. So I'll step back from buffalo sauce for a while, because that's a pretty high bar for people to be able to hit. But they do a good job with a campfire wing. But the right way to do it, you got to use Frank's, is from a buffalo wing perspective. I think all wings are good that way. We've actually got other sauces than buffalo wings in Western New York, which we'll have to get you to try some. We got stuff called boss sauce, everything. But the most important thing, it's got to be a good-sized wing. I mean, if ultimately you're cooking these little wing nubs that people have and overcooking them until they're basically a potato chip made out of chicken, that's wrong. It should always be served with blue cheese. Ranch is a war crime that everyone should know about.
Wow, that's a shot at Ashbrook.
I'm guilty of that.
It is, yeah. And God bless folks that do that. There's still time for you. We can get you there. But consistency's good. You need to make sure there's some meat on the wing, and then ultimately, if you're using a hot sauce, it should be Frank's and plenty of butter. I mean, this is not a health food situation.
Yeah,
I think size is something that Anchor Bar sort of staple in Buffalo. I think that's something they get right that a lot of other places just don't. And there's a new Anchor Bar location in Virginia, and you said you might try that out.
Yeah, you guys broke me in some news there. It's kind of a tough life being a kid who grew up in Western New York. You had great access to it everywhere. There was good wings, great wings, and even greatest wings. But knowing that there's one down here, I look forward to trying it. So we'll make the wife go out there this weekend.
It's fantastic.
So you're also a Buffalo Bills fan.
I am, lifelong.
What's your take on your team basically giving up wide receivers? What's that all about? You got a franchise quarterback.
We do have a franchise quarterback. We got a great coach. We got a great front office. I think we got a team system that's working, and I think the reason why we have one less wide receiver this week, at least one really key one, is he didn't fit those dynamics. I think ultimately he was the man out on this. And I think I got a lot of friends who are Minnesota fans. I think they'd tell you they've seen this before. And so I think from our perspective, we're excited. There's a deep wide receivers in this year's draft. I think there's still some opportunities on the open market. It hurt not just to lose Steph, who I think has been a great player for the last few years and helped Josh progress, but also it's a big financial hit, and we dug ourselves a little bit of that grave. So we gotta live through the hard times a little bit, but there's still a lot of hope there. Josh is a killer.
His Diggs' production kind of went down in the second half of the season, and like you said, he was really expensive. So he goes over to Houston, right?
He does, yeah.
So my, as a Colts fan, thank you for shipping him over to a divisional rival. They haven't had enough success, with, C.J. Stroud, offensive rookie of the year, or Anderson, the defensive rookie of the year, or all the other talent they've brought in here in free agency. So thank you for giving my opponent another weapon. I really appreciate that.
Hey man, I feel you. I just at least we can all agree the Patriots are bad things for America, right? That's one of the big problems we're facing.
Yeah. Patriots are dysfunctional as an organization, but not quite as dysfunctional as the United States Congress. And I know that's something that's on the top of mind for you and for AFP as an organization.
Yeah, it's been tough to watch. I think as we were watching the eclipse the other day, I started to think of what a perfect metaphor it was for Congress. Things got a little bit darker. It wasn't as bright as it used to be. It got a little bit colder. But hopefully, this too will pass, and we'll kind of come out the other side and be a little bit better off. But in the meantime, the stuff we're seeing is really challenging. We've replaced enlightened debate with floor fights. We've replaced statesmen with politicians. We've entered an era of soundbite politics, and the challenge around that is that people are probably more connected and paying more attention than they have at any time, probably since the late 1960s. And I think the big challenge there is the reason that they're connected isn't because there's better TV commercials. It's not because people are driving things. It's the issues that I think are hurting people today are hurting them in their families. They're hurting them in their businesses. They're hurting them in their bottom line, and they're worried for themselves and for their kids. So, I think this is a real pivotal turning point in this country. And I think people are looking and they're shopping for America's tomorrow, and they have a big inflection point coming up. So
I know our audience is very familiar with AFP and everything you guys are doing to try to fix those problems. But I'm wondering if you could just sort of walk through top 2-3 things that you guys are doing to try to turn things around in Washington.
Yeah, no, I think part of it's about really treating the American citizen and the American voter like they're as smart as they actually are, and providing them the information. And then the platform to go out and do something about it. We're excited to be part of the do something about it, caucus versus the say something about it caucus.
Yeah, a lot of need for that.
And I think ultimately, our folks are the ones who, they don't just knock doors at election time. They knock doors at Wisconsin in the winter. They go out in Dallas in June. They go out in Florida in July. These are folks who, they see the problems and the challenges, and they really want to get out there and do something about it. So a big part of it's about activating people who care a lot, who want to see change in this country and want to help be part of that change. So getting people engaged has been a big part of that. Here in D.C., Congress gets a pretty tough rap, a lot of which they have really earned. We've seen that dysfunction on display, not in any one party, really kind of across the board, whether it's the executive, the party, the agencies, kind of across the board. But there's a lot of people here doing good work. So, a bigger part of this is about elevating good voices. We've also seen folks who've kind of gone the wrong way at different times. So, we have a couple of different R's that we focus on when we think about Congress. We want to recruit good people. We want better candidates and better elected officials. We want to retain good ones. We want to reclaim wayward ones. We want to ultimately replace ones who are ultimately headed the wrong direction. And I think that strategy is something that we're looking at doing. And the folks who work with us, our volunteers, our staff, our supporters, they all want to see that too.
Yeah, and your volunteer base is just growing and growing every single cycle. What's that number up to now?
Boy, I'd have to look and see. We're up several million. It's
several million people involved in this organization. It's one of the biggest political organizations in the entire country.
Yeah, and I've been involved.
Maybe the biggest.
And I think from a center-right perspective, that's probably right.
Yeah.
And I think, I remember when the Tea Party kicked off, there felt like there was a lot of energy. There's a lot of energy like that right now, too. And I think... there's folks who are really, really excited about an opportunity to go out there and make a difference. They feel like there's real choices out there to be made, and they feel that the impact of their decisions are actually impacting them directly. So we're feeling that energy. We're seeing it at the doors. It's a tough political environment, so people who are active and who are interested, they're out there answering tough questions and trying to help explain why some of these folks are the right folks, why there's people doing good work, why these are the right issues to care about, work on, and to spend their time, talent, and treasure on that stuff. So
yeah. So it hasn't been an easy year for Republicans in the House of Representatives. The ouster of Kevin McCarthy, all the infighting that we've seen, brinkmanship over, trying to get policy across the finish line, all this sort of stuff. Kind of a two-part question is like, what do you trace back to as, sort of the cause of that, and how do you think we fix it?
Well, that's a tough question. So the cause of it, I think a big part of it has been a change in what's valued, the incentive structure that exists in Washington. I think for a long time, the evening news was one news source. It carried one version of the truth, and people interacted with their elected officials around Election Day. I think our politicians became rock stars. It became sports. It became, what team are you on? What jersey are you on? It went from statesmanship to being politicians. It went to those sound bites that ultimately shortened the debate from an enlightened one with information. And I think ultimately it led to people oversimplifying and trying to, I think, focus on the fight more than the win. And so because of that, the strong foundational principled perspective on what people are doing slipped away to be able to get that key soundbite, to hit it in time for the 5 o'clock repeat. So I think that was probably what kicked it off. But I also think, where do we go from here? You look at some of the things that you guys know all too well. Long form podcasts are going crazy. People want to know more about these issues. They want to dive deeper, and they want to get active. We're seeing those conversions where someone goes from someone who cared before to someone who wants to get up and do something. So I think it's about giving people platforms. That's what AFP wants to do. I know that's what Ruthless does. You guys put the broader information in context and give people a chance to kind of go into it. So I think that's a big part of it. We're going to have to inform and engage people. We're going to have to motivate them. We're going to have to activate them. And at the end of the day, I think elected officials are going to look, and the incentives are going to shift. The kind of person you are when you get here, that's going to matter to folks because they're going to know.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, like you said, it's like a soundbite era. It's a hit on television where you get 30 seconds. And it's fundraising, right? It's fundraising. The incentives, back to your point on incentives, there's incentives to get the juiciest clip out on social media, or the perfect talking point for cable news, or the best copy for fundraising. And the nuance is just lost. Entirely lost. I think that's one of the reasons why we started the show in the first place, is like so much of our politics became the soundbite rather than why are you here and what did you accomplish?
Yeah, and a soundbite doesn't provide people with information, and information is not something they're getting from mainstream media and haven't for at least a decade. People are tuning in because they want to be informed. They already know what their opinions are. They don't need somebody to tell them how to think. They just need somebody to give them the information they're not getting from any other source. And if their politicians are only speaking in like one phrase, two, three, four phrase sentences that are like designed to just get them something, and the media is just trying to tell people how to think, there's literally nothing for the audience. And I think that's why people like podcasts. That's why people are gravitating toward groups like AFP, because they're looking for actual information that they can use, and it's one of the reasons why I think that your organization is so successful and is going to continue to see to similar growth.
Yeah, look, we're really excited about it. It's great to be able to meet with and talk to folks, at the doorsteps and in the driveways across this country. You'll find people who are incredibly passionate about, recognizing that we have challenges and feeling like they can be part of the solution. And so I think that's going to be a big part of where we have to go.
So for the people who are not motivated, the people who are disappointed with what we're able to get done right now with, conservatives in the House have a very small majority. Speaker Johnson, God bless him for trying, but not everything's going to be perfect or 100% of what we want. Like, what's your message to conservatives who are out there who are just sort of demoralized by that fact?
Yeah, I think first of all, we empathize with them, right? We, as you pointed out, I think Speaker Johnson is probably one of the most conservative speakers this country's ever had, but We're in a time of close majorities. I think it's important to take that step back, think strategically, and recognize long term is where we have to win. We're not going to give up any easy runs here in this inning if we can avoid it. But the opportunity for us is to be able to have the same kind of long-term vision for where this country needs to be, that we can then work year in and year out to be able to incrementally work that way to get there. We didn't get to the disaster we're in any one term. I mean, it's been a path. We haven't passed our budgets on time. We haven't been able to stay within fiscal constraints. We've worked outside the process so often. I think it's going to require us to be able to take a really serious look and hold accountable those elected officials once they get here, to the things that they promised. And so I think from that perspective, what we say is, come join together with other people who also feel that way, who it's important for us to fix this, to start today and never take the pressure off and just keep working at it. And look, more often than not, we're finding those people don't just come, they bring their families.
Right.
They bring their friends. They talk about it at work. The whole nature of grassroots is that one person with a good idea and some ambition reaches out to somebody else with that, and then together we fix as much as we can of this country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're about to get into the silly season of politics, right? There's going to be less people focusing in on what's happening under the Capitol dome, and the rhetoric's going to go through the roof and all of this sort of stuff. And I'm curious, as somebody who does that sort of work every single day, what are the one or two things that people should be thinking about here in the future and paying attention to that they're not hearing on cable news every night?
Yeah, I think the fiscal cliff is really one of the big things. As we go into next year and we see the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act stuff start to expire, we hit a debt ceiling. We've got a really significant challenge that's going to face this country. When those things tend to reset, we are already in a very, very fragile economy. And I think one of the things that folks do is they talk about the economy and national security and all these things like they're separate issues. A robust U.S. economy that's able to support families and businesses and jobs and all of the other goals that we have, it's necessary for the American experience. So I think having an eye beyond November and into January and February where these questions are going to be answered or not answered is really important. I think also, quite frankly, healthcare. Healthcare is one of those issues which Republicans, after the failure of repeal and replace, they started to look at it like it was a liability instead of an asset. Just didn't work on it. You've seen the president started to step up on talking about some of those issues. Republicans have got great plans. They're ready for it. I think that's one of them. I think the immigration debate's really incredibly important, and you shouldn't shy away from the more complicated parts of the issues to deal with the one that seems to be right in front of us. Yeah, the question of border security absolutely has to be addressed, but you got to deal with the symptoms and the disease. And, looking at both of them is not in some way bad. That's an opportunity to make sure you're taking care of the whole problem. And I think, quite frankly, if we enter silly season and people make it as silly as they can, we're going to miss the opportunity to really get people bought in on the solutions that we need. So the soundbite might get you the eyeballs today, but the solutions are the things that will give us a chance to turn this country around and give us a chance to really do the kind of work we know we need to do to be proud of it.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. Brent, Gardner, if people want to know more about the work you guys are doing, where should they go?
Yeah, they should come to our website. They should stop by a local office. They should, reach out to us. Look at Bidenomics.com, which is actually owned by us.
I love that thing.
Where we have an opportunity to be able to expose people to some of the bad policy decisions by this administration. But look, there's AFP people in your community. And you can either find us on the web, you can find us at one of our many offices across the country, or you can watch us online. We've got social media, YouTube, Facebook, really kind of across the board. So there's a lot of ways to find out more and get involved.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brent.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Appreciate it.
Great stuff.
Smart guy. Buffalo Bills guy.
Nobody knows pain like they know pain.
It's been great lately. They're almost there. Almost there.
The Buffalo Bills?
They just unloaded their wide receiving core.
Well, they had Josh Allen. I think he's great. They've got a lot of hope there. Hopefully he doesn't live like Jim Kelly.
There is no
career.
hope in Buffalo, Smug.
Yeah, but you're also biased in this. You can't let them have good things because you're a Minnesota Vikings fan.
No, because I'm linked at the hip. We both have 4 Super Bowl losses. We're the only teams in America with no Super Bowl wins and 4 Super Bowl losses. They can't win before we lose.
Brutal.
Anyway, great stuff. Happy to have him on. Fantastic. All right, so here's some stuff that's coming out of the administration this week, and we've talked a lot about how there's a constituency within Hamas and in the Democratic Party and everything else. Well, wait till you hear what's going on here. According to NBC News, Biden says Netanyahu is making a mistake with his handling of the Israel-Hamas war. President Joe Biden has upped his criticism of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's role in the Israel-Hamas war, but did not indicate any significant changes in U.S. policy toward its Middle East ally. I think what he's doing is a mistake, Biden said. Oh. All right, so let me level set this for a minute, because this is a more serious part than we've been dealing with up to this point. We all remember October 7th. Imagine having an ally. I mean, we have a handful of allies in this world that are come hell and high water allies, where anything that you're into, they're in. Anything that they're into, you're in. And you don't need to have a conversation about it. It's just ride or die guys. Like England is one of those allies. Israel's one of those allies. And it happens to be located in an area where, I don't know if anybody's noticed, everybody wants to kill us. Or at least a huge majority of countries are interested in that prospect.
Right.
Was that Dearborn, Michigan? Sorry.
Fair point.
Serious topic.
Mr. McDaniels, fair point. But now you have a president of the United States that's critiquing the response to Israel in how they're handling this war. And it's like they say it's a PR issue in large part, that they're losing the PR. Amongst whom are they losing that PR war? Fellas?
It's their left-wing base who is trying to make this into a thing like McDaniel brings up. Look at Dearborn, Michigan, what's going on. And you said Hamas is a constituency within the Democrat Party. This would be no different than Britain in February of 2002 being like, you guys think you could wrap this up?
Yeah. What's really interesting, I think, with the way that the Biden administration has tried to court the Hamas constituency within their party is trying to single out Netanyahu, as the prime minister of the Israeli government and make this an issue with Netanyahu and not with Israel.
Yeah.
Right? Because they got to play both sides of this thing.
Very important point.
Yep. And so they want to throw the blame on Netanyahu himself and not Israel for all of those, reasons that they got to triangulate. But what's fascinating is Netanyahu's position in all of this with the war of Hamas is incredibly popular in Israel. Incredibly, incredibly popular.
Yeah. Well, if anything, if he has demerits within the Israeli population, he's not gone hard enough.
Yeah.
That's it. And that's the reality. What we're telling you right now is the reality. What you're looking at on cable news and on the front page of these major news publications is the world's discomfort with what's happening here. The reality is the country that he's governing, the people who elected him, the people who are ultimately the ones with skin in the game on all of this, quite literally, I might add, are the people who are saying, if anything, we're going too soft on this situation.
Yeah, because they're eyes wide open, right? They've had to deal with this for a long time. Yeah. So they understand the absolute stakes that are in this war. I think what's really interesting is the way that the Biden administration is sort of nitpicking on the way in which Israel conducts this war as it tries to, get some sort of ceasefire together with Hamas. And I think it's worth noting on the other side of this conversation as they're trying to negotiate this deal, the headlines on the other side. This is from the Jerusalem Post headline: Hamas unable to locate 40 Israeli hostages for first stage of hostage deal. Huh.
Oh, interesting. They're unable to locate them?
I'm sure they were taking really good care of them. Maybe putting them up in a hotel or something. Certainly not raping them and beating them to death.
Somewhere in the midst of the raping and the beheading, they lost track of them.
So can we be a little bit more outraged? I mean, that's outrageous, but the President of the United States, there are Americans.
Right.
Yes. 8 Americans are currently
being held.
Yep.
And, there needs to be a unilateral ceasefire. And then Hamas admits in the Cairo peace talks or the ceasefire talks, the reason why we can't have a ceasefire is because we can't return your hostages. Because, look, folks, they're probably dead. Or, so in a terrible state that they need more time.
Well, they certainly can't return them.
Right. So, let's also, Biden has just completely, Sideshow Bob stepped on the rake again, because not only did Israel do their own version of turning Soleimani into salsa by bombing the Iranian IRGC commander up in Damascus 2 weeks ago, but the Ayatollah said as soon as Eid is done, so Ramadan is over and now it's Eid, as soon as that's over, they're going to at least use their proxies either in Hezbollah in Lebanon, or they're going to shoot missiles over into Israel, right? Yeah. Whether it's Iranian territory or whether it's from Syrian or Iraqi proxies.
Yeah.
So imagine, like Smug said, it's 6 months after 9/11, and Mexico, let's say, is saying that they're going to, the Islamic regime took over Mexico and is going to start bombing American cities with cruise missiles. And Britain comes in and says, you really need a ceasefire. You really need a unilateral ceasefire.
That's quite literally the parallel here.
Yeah.
That is quite literally what we're talking about. It just astounds me. And all of it's political, because you heard Joe Biden's response immediately post October 7th, which was unqualified support for Israel in elimination of Hamas. That's what he said. And at least the American public was largely united around that. Now it's this drip. And you look at the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Associated Press, all these outfits. What they talk about is like, oh, there was, like the chefs thing, right? Oh, there was something that killed some innocent people. There's this, that, and that. All horrible tragedies, no question about it. But nobody goes back to the fact that there are still hostages, to your point, American hostages that are being taken from kibbutzes absolutely without any fault of their own, raped, murdered, killed, whatever. That's what started all of this shit. You don't get to just sort of like take backsies.
Yeah.
And that's where we're at with this. And they're doing it entirely politically because they have a progressive base that is not solidified in a re-election of Joe Biden. And they're concerned about it. It has nothing to do with the view of what ought to happen, which you should be very concerned about, particularly as you consider who you're casting your ballot for.
The funniest part about it, and I think Smug's brought this up before, is when Trump was president, you had peace breaking out over the Middle East. You had Arab-Israeli Accords, the recognition of Israel, Abraham Accords. But also, Russia wasn't invading countries. We didn't have. So it's funny how it happens. And when Obama's president, you have crazy leftist foreign policy. He loses Crimea, and there's the Arab Spring and fall of monarchies across the Arab world.
The war in Syria.
Then you have 4 years of relative peace and prosperity that nobody wants to talk about. And oh no, it's back to the status quo. No, why don't we make the 4 years where we actually had success the status quo?
That's the thing. That's exactly it.
It's incredible. We'll keep an eye on it and keep you updated on all of that. In other news, Smug, I'm interested in your thoughts on this. Turns out inflation's on this rise again.
Yep. So CPI numbers came in, and they came in hot, which means above expectations. And that sent, the market went down because things are looking bad. No matter how many times Joe Biden says it's over, Bidenomics shows it's failure. I'll read off some of these numbers. This is from Jackie Kotkowitz, who put these together. Since Biden took office, price of gasoline's up 47.8%. Groceries up 21%.
My God.
Baby food's up 30%. Rent is up 20%. Electricity is up 28%. Airfare 32%. Public transportation 22%. Real average weekly earnings down 3.9%. So you compound all those prices going up 20, 30%. Real wages have gone down.
But why aren't people appreciating Biden's good economy?
That's the thing. We need more of these articles from journos on their way to getting laid off. That things are great.
It's genuinely remarkable.
Yeah, and the political implications here, I think, can't be overlooked. The expectation, I think, among Democrats was that if inflation cooled, the Fed would cut rates
come down.
And that would be a great story going into November.
Ain't happening.
This persistent issue with inflation changes that timeline, and it ruins their opportunity to take a victory lap.
There was serious heartburn.
Serious.
In the Biden administration over this thing.
Right. That's the thing. So an important thing is you'll see a lot of Democrats and whatever say, oh, it's a 0.3% increase. They're trying to do this like month-to-month game. If you compare from a year ago, it's up 3.4% more. and you target a 2% rate, so it's coming in 150% higher than what you would like.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll get back to the point where we're like, this is why inflation is good?
Probably, man. Like they're starting to run out of ideas and lies, because that's the thing, is this is the heart of the election. Is things have not gotten better for Americans under Joe Biden.
It's like if the speed limit is 55 and I'm going 75 and the officer pulls me over, I don't say, "Excuse me, officer, the last mile I was going 74." I've only gone only gone 1 mile an hour faster. The rate has slowed. It's like, no, you're still 20 miles an hour over the speed limit.
An absolute disaster on the economic front, and they've got to be just sweating it. On the border, this one just absolutely grinds my gears, okay? So an Axios yesterday morning. Scoop. Big scoop going on. A lot of scoops. Biden plans order to limit southern border crossings by end of month.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, I thought Republicans needed to fix the border. We've been told that, like, Joe Biden's trying so hard to fix the border and these Republicans aren't fixing it for him. And it turns out maybe he should have not overrode all of Trump's executive orders. Maybe he shouldn't have opened the border. Maybe if he can do this by an executive order, and he chose not to for years.
So my problem with this article is that it doesn't say anything about what borders are. Kamala Harris has added to this.
Yeah,
like how her team must have been together to like draft a plan to put in front of the president.
Maps.
Yeah, I mean, she's been taking her time, but obviously, you know, she's been in charge of this problem, and now finally she's put something in front of the president.
Well, she has thought about this long and hard, McDaniel, as we all know.
She told them, do not come.
They thought that would work.
And the Venezuelans responded?
They came.
I'm going to come. All right. So, but here's the thing that bothers me the most, and you alluded to this, is what he's doing is Biden plans an executive order to dramatically limit the number of asylum seekers who can cross the southern border.
What a racist.
Oh, wait a minute. We were all told that this couldn't happen.
No, it's Republicans.
This was all Republicans' fault.
This.
That they've done this because they can't have common sense solutions. You mean to tell me that as president of the United States, you can actually secure your borders, the likes of which Donald Trump did 4 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a shocking development, isn't it?
And it's something because like they really thought that they had something where they were like, it's an election year. We're gonna say that the only reason the border isn't secure is because Republicans didn't vote for the bill that we put up. Never mind that H.R. 2 that the House voted on and passed would have stopped this. Democrats in the Senate didn't want it, but they hoped they could just say Republicans are the cause, that the border's a mess. And now this is just a full capitulation, a full admission that Joe Biden could have stopped this anytime he wanted over the previous years, and he chose not to.
I mean, if the Senate would pass that House, legislation, it would certainly help the issue. I think, like the problem with this, an executive order, and we saw this during the Trump administration as well, as what invariably happens is it gets challenged in court, right? And that these left-wing groups end up, filing a lawsuit against the administration and trying to stop these executive orders from taking place. It hurt Donald Trump when he was president, and I'm very curious to see if those same left-wing groups do the same thing to Joe Biden.
So just to cut to the chase on this, you have a border policy that the administration will not, but now admits could, have put into place, allowing for unfettered access to the United States. You have them blaming Republicans, except for the fact that House Republicans passed a bill that would fix all this and bind the hands of the administration in terms of their ability to sort of color outside the lines, and a Senate Democrat majority who has decided that they will not take that up. And now we find out the administration is like, maybe we ought to do something about this anyway. I mean, fellas, I don't know if there's any issue before the American people there's not more clarity on
no
than
one's
the
confused.
issue of border security.
No one's confused.
I just don't.
And they weren't confused at any point.
Can I be outraged for a second?
Please.
So if you're saying, I had the ability to secure the border, but I didn't, Like,
Isn't that worse?
Well, I mean, I put on my lawyer hat.
Isn't it
like,
worse?
How is Laken Riley's blood not on your hands?
Exactly.
Like,
Damn, yeah.
In a sense of saying, well, all of these crimes that we've been talking about being committed, also, how are let's take it to let's look even in favor of the migrants, like who are being raped and trafficked and the drugs coming across the border. Like, how are you not complicit in literally all of those crimes that are being committed if you say, oh yeah, I have the power to do it, I just chose not to.
And that's
Dude,
what
that's
the
it.
admission is. I think this is actually much worse for the administration than doing nothing at all.
Right.
You're better off convincing people that there is no problem than you are admitting as a problem and you could have done something about it.
But it also proves our point. Like Smug said, it was like that wasn't going to work. It was untenable. The idea that it was Republicans in Congress who failed to secure the border, and actually it wasn't selling with the American people.
Yeah.
So this really is like the last minute Hail Mary to be like, no, I'm tough on the border.
I'm convinced, like with this record, this administration, Spaghettis could put his name on a ballot and be president of the United States.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm serious.
It is that much of a mess.
It is
They've
that
made
much
such
of a mess. And they couldn't fuck this up any worse. Like everything that they touch, Israel, border, economy.
Yeah,
We just talked about it in the last 20 minutes. Every single thing, every facet of your American life you look at and it's like, I don't know, if you were to try to ruin this country, what would you change? What would you change? Oh, jeez, it's unbelievable. All right, want variety?
Yes.
Always.
So I want to note Smug's objections.
Oh, we're gonna do this right? Yeah.
I want to note Smug's objection. First of all, he knows many of you have sensitivities, and
Families are listening.
he's thought about that a lot. And if this is if you're viewing this on your television with your children, know that we've provided some
Timestamps.
Yeah,
Well, we have the timestamps.
but there's also editing involved with all of this. So you're not going to see.
They can jump ahead a little bit.
Some blurring.
But for the rest of us, this is fucking hilarious. All right, so a Mexican TV outlet accidentally aired a man's berries,
Cojones.
on during the solar eclipse coverage. Can we get clip one, please?
Desde las 11:09 de la mañana, completamente a oscuras, estaría Mazatlán,
Sí.
Durango,
Breathless
Gómez Palacio,
coverage, if you are
Lerdo,
an audio-only listener.
Nazas también en
Of
el municipio de Durango,
The sun being eclipsed.
Torreón,
And here we go.
Musquis, donde está y las negras.
Ay, ay, ay.
So what happened there was that they had live coverage of the eclipse where the sun was being taken over by the sun, and they switched to another feed in which it was a light which a man passed his balls through. Let's be honest. He had his balls
I can't believe we just showed that.
masquerading.
I'm so
we
glad
didn't
we blurred
show
it.
We blurred it.
We blurred it.
It was tastefully done.
It was very tasteful.
I mean, we thought about this. We know Smug's concerns as the resident prudist.
I noticed he's quiet this entire segment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just reading. It said that the two women anchors gasped. Well, the guy acted like it didn't happen.
Wow, that's going to be an HR complaint.
Maybe it was the dude's video.
Yeah.
So apparently, like it's like the Baba Booey stuff that happens in the United States.
Yeah, Howard
that's
Stern.
Yeah, it's like a Howard Stern thing, but in like Latin America.
So that was
It was like
those were Latin cojones.
in the 2017 eclipse. That was like a meme that got started, and so now they got roasted again. And so that's the problem. Like you knew it was coming.
You're telling me on Mexican news it's become a meme to show your balls.
No, it's just an eclipse. Not just it's not an everyday thing.
So you think of the moon. You think of the moon when in an eclipse though. Like you don't think of balls, which is kind of interesting.
You don't, but the way the pace of which he took over the light that was supposedly the sun is an artist.
It was tastefully
He was an artist.
You know, Joe Biden would have funded it. Like, that would have gotten a grant. And NPR is going to feature
look at
it.
Smug's
Poor
face.
Smug.
Look at Smug's
Poor
face.
Smug.
It's fine. Dude, the next segment is hilarious. I really can't wait for this.
He's outraged. All right, so the East Bay Pirates?
No.
No, what do you want to get to?
That one.
Oh, Scrabble?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
this
tell
is
us
great.
about the Scrabble thing.
Okay, so Scrabble has created a new game that's, quote, less competitive and more, quote, inclusive to appeal to Gen Z. It says, for the first time in 75 years, Mattel is making a major change to the iconic board game Scrabble and touting a, quote, no more scoring gameplay option. The new launch is double-sided. One side, it says, includes helper cards. They use a simpler scoring system. It's quicker to play, and it allows people to play in teams. They said, quote, the makers of Scrabble found that younger people, Gen Z people, don't quite like the competitive nature of Scrabble.
Come on.
Oh, it's a participation trophy issue.
This is the Duncanization of America. The boomers played OG Scrabble, and they fought for this country the same way they would fight each other when it's a board game. You play to win.
Is it available on iPad?
It's got to be. Okay. So parents, you iPad parents out there, you can raise kids as soft as you too, as you are with your iPads. But this is the whole problem, folks. It's gone beyond participation trophies. They don't even want to compete.
So Smug, I do have to ask you, and this is as a friend, but are you just concerned that they're taking away from? I mean, the last winners of the spelling bees.
This is, I'm telling you, it's going after my people. The same way that Harvard does. They won't let us have anything. We can't win spelling bees. We can't win games of Scrabble. This is
discrimination.
I mean, listen,
when they say more inclusive, I know what they're doing, folks.
They
They don't want to see my people win.
Nobody's had more of a codlock on spelling than the Indians.
They're going after it, dude.
Yeah.
They can't let us have anything.
I remember. So I used to do a betting pool back in the day on spelling bees. And we had like
you know who to bet on, dude.
No. Like we went. I'm not kidding you. We would scout these little fuckers, and I had back in the day a kid named Akshay Budiga. And because of all the obvious, he homeschooled, he was an Indian guy, it looked like he had domineering parents. Like, obviously, he couldn't be a good speller. And he rolled up, and he just, sure as sugar, he just went through the first 15 rounds. Like, no problem, never a hesitation. Got under the big lights. He was down to like 3. And they walk him up there, and he asks for like country of origin or whatever, and he's working through his process.
The entomology.
And all of a sudden, he does the like head shake, and down he goes.
No.
He completely passes
out?
Completely passes out. Like he couldn't take the pressure.
Poor Akshay.
But listen to what Budiga does. Budiga, in all of the heritage that had surrounded him, arose from the stage, grabbed the microphone, and fucking nailed
No
this
way.
one.
Wow.
Absolutely nailed it, and I win the spelling bee.
I'll tell you what happened. The parents shouted, "Do it! Get up!"
I'm just saying, Holmes, that's really good scouting on your part that you knew he's like, would have a fit, but you knew he could get up.
You could be severely dehydrated, and he's still going to hit.
It's like, sometimes your thoroughbreds have gate antics,
Yeah, right.
but you bet on the winner.
You never know. You never know how they're going to...
This is just gate antics.
Yeah, whatever it is, it's gate antics, and then ultimately how they perform is what your scouting is going to... we should get back into that, by the way. Should we do... I think it's at the end of May. We should do maybe a ruthless...
Horse betting?
No, spelling bee betting.
Oh, yeah. I'll bet on anything.
Don't you think we should?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't believe this just occurred to me. Wolf, mark this down. They're doing the preliminaries right now, so we just start scouting the regions.
Yeah.
And we have to get into this, and we'll get everybody involved in it. You got to bet on these little bastards. It got so bad. It got so bad. I'm not kidding you. This became a cult following, where we put up like an internal website amongst like the 20 of us that did it, and somebody found it, and it went viral as hell. So we had to like take it down because we were all in like sensitive government positions.
The ambassador to India was a part of
This predated my McConnell service. If anybody wants to like throw stones at it, but this is what ultimately happened, and we ended up going to. They used to do it at the Hilton in D.C., like the downtown Hilton that's like just outside of Chinatown, and we rented a suite that overlooked these little miracles, so we could scout them in person. and
I mean, the dedication to the craft is unbelievable.
Which was all fun and games until one of our participants, unnamed, I will not say who this was, rushed the stage at one point and attempted to hand the trophy to one of
No.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. It went wrong, and we had to cancel the whole thing. Yeah.
So is there like a side bet as like how many letters the last word will contain, or like a parlay into, or like
Well, it's not about the
or finish
word.
1, 2, 3. Like
It's just about the participant.
Okay, all right. So
You
it's
have to
just the kids,
because
not the words.
what we used to do is you pick 4. You get a draft. It's a full draft.
Okay.
You pick 4 that you think can win, and your 5th is one that you think is an absolute loser. Right? Where it's like you look at them, you scouted it, you saw the region.
What is miscongeniality in a spelling bee? Like, it's like a tongue-tied kid.
Listen, this is black and white stuff. You can spell it or you can't. Yeah. And the 5th kid was obviously like some rural white kid. He was like a public school guy. You know? I mean, like, that's a...
Well, he's never going to learn with these Scrabble rules.
That's the thing.
That's true.
Well, the most hysterical part about the way that the whole thing went down is that our 5th pick at one point while we were doing this, somebody picked Josh Dawsey as their loser.
No.
Because he came from South Carolina. He was
Josh Dawsey?
He was a regular school. None of us knew who this kid
No
was.
kidding.
And come 20 years later, all of a sudden I find out it's the Josh Dawsey at the
The
Washington
guy can
Post.
It's
use
like
words.
And he killed it. And so the person who picked him as the loser just got wrecked in the competition.
Amazing story.
It's like the meme, like beware of who you make fun of in middle school.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly right. So anyway, there's a small little vignette for you. Do you want to do your illegal immigrants thing, Duncan?
Yeah.
This is hilarious.
This is hilarious.
I mean, it's like a Coen Brothers movie.
It really
I'm just
is.
going to read the headline. I mean, illegal immigrants pay a man to fake rob them so they can get a U visa, but then a bystander kills the fake robber.
Dude, that is Coen Brothers movie. That's the
It
best
really
way to
is.
describe it.
So according to Fox 26 in Houston, they reported on what police thought was a robbery turned homicide when a bystander shot a robber, but an investigation now shows that the robbery was fake. 22-year-old Rashad Scott was staging a robbery that 2 victims were in on when Jesus Vargas, a bystander, shot and killed him.
Oh my God.
Court records say that Scott was working with William X. Winfrey, who instructed Scott to stage the robbery in exchange for money. The documents say that 2 victims of the robbery
We're in on the robbery.
Yeah, so they could file U visas. According to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U visas are granted to victims of certain crimes to aid law enforcement in solving cases. It grants the victim temporary immigration status, including work authorization, temporary immigration status for qualifying family members of a victim, and the possibility of lawful permanent residence. So what happened was these people apparently saw this little glitch in the matrix,
Right.
where they could, if they were a victim of some kind of a crime, they could get lawful entry into the United States. I mean, it's like it's sort of like this is like a next level.
Yeah, it's like, you know, all of these illegal immigrants from these countries have exploited the asylum laws for so long. They're like, no, that's not enough. I need to also commit fake crimes within the borders of the United States for more visas. It's like, if you want any vignette that could possibly show how much Joe Biden has fucked up this border, it's that people will literally fake robberies in order to get visas in this country. Garbage culture, garbage country, thanks to Joe Biden.
Oh my God, I love it.
I like going from like breaking the law to like fake breaking the law.
Yes.
But the only punishment they got was when they fake broke the law.
Yeah.
Like
Can you imagine the moment that dude got shot, by the way? It was like, what the fuck? I thought we were all in on this. Oh, man, poor bastard. Anyway, that's where the situation down at the border.
Yeah. Things are looking great.
Thank you, Melton. All right, so we're going to go to our interview here. This is Russ Walker and Jack Melton. Pay attention to this thing, because from what I heard, there's stuff here you're never going to hear anywhere else about Afghanistan, the immediate aftermath, and what people were doing to try to get out of it.
Yeah, we're going to peel back the curtain here. These guys were on the ground, on the phones, working it, trying to figure out how to get people out of country as the fall of Kabul's happening, and it's really illuminating.
Yep.
I want to welcome to the program 2 fantastic guests here. I got Russ Walker and Jack Melton. and they've got an incredible story for us. It's been detailed in a new book, Failure of Leadership, and it's about the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And these two guys have just incredible insight on what went down those last 15 days of the Biden administration's withdrawal. And it's really a privilege to have you all on the show. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
So Jack, let's start with you. How the heck did you get roped into this? You know, the world's basically fallen apart in Afghanistan. Where does the story really start?
Well, it starts that Monday in Sicily, about 9 o'clock my time. I got reached out to by a former 3-star general's wife who asked me to help. And I said, well, what do you need? And she said, we got a bunch of West Pointers, Afghani West Point grads trapped and can't get out of the airport. And so I said, what do you need me to do? And then she said, well, you snuck into Europe. You can sneak these guys out. Use your political connections and get them out. I said, okay. And so
You stuck into Europe during COVID. Don't forget that, you know.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, during COVID. And I immediately just texted, Russ, of course. You know, he's 9 hours behind me, so he was still up. And then basically every Politico I knew, if they worked on a staff, on a campaign, or a staff on the Hill, and it just went from there. And I reached out to the guys later on, and it just took off.
So Russ, where do you come in this? You know, so Jack gives you a call, and it's like, what? We got to work the phone tree and figure out who in Washington can help us solve these problems. How does that all go down?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because when he reached out to me, he just says, hey, I got these 4 West Pointers. Their paperwork's not done. No one at the State Department is answering the phone. Can you guys, can you reach out to, maybe some of the senators, and see if you can get their paperwork pushed through? So I got up the next, I said, yeah, I can do it next morning. I got up and I immediately reached out to friends I had that had connections to, Lindsey Graham. I reached out directly to Senator Lee because I had worked for him as a senior advisor. So I texted him. He put me in touch, and I texted everybody I knew, including friends in the belt and the Beltway. And before I knew it, Senator Lee got right back to me and he said, hey, contact this person in my office. Let's see what we can do. So within 24 hours, Senator Lee had pushed through his office, had pushed through and gotten these 4 West Pointers on the list. So we had all the legal stuff we needed to get them on a plane and get them out of Afghanistan. What we didn't realize is that they wanted to bring their whole families with them. They had all these extended family members that we had to figure out how to get, on these same lists. And so that's kind of where it all started. And, it just kind of snowballed. Everything snowballed right after that. Like after that first 24 hours and we got the 4 out and their families out, everything snowballed.
So go ahead, Jack.
We also had to come up with a plan to get these guys out because they've been hanging out the airport for 3 days and they couldn't get out. And I, working the system and everything, I ended up getting in direct contact with the guys on the wire that had left the embassy in there. And just due to my experience of hanging out with mostly military guys, I could talk the talk, and we came up with a plan to get them out. And one of them, the funny thing is they were burying all their West Point stuff. And I made them go dig up all their diplomas and fold it up and hide it on them so they could identify themselves to the State Department at the airport. And that's literally how they got out.
Yeah, I mean, this is an important key thing, Michael, that made what we did different than I think what a lot of other people were trying to do at that moment was because of the connection with some generals and other generals that they knew who were still on active duty, retired generals and generals on active duty. We were able to literally get in touch with a handful of lieutenants that were on the wall at HKIA, and we had direct contact with them the entire 2 weeks. And through that contact, they built these teams inside that would open up the gate and help pull our people through as we brought them forward. And it was like this weird thing that just kind of all happened at once. And this is what Jack's talking about when he says we worked out this system. It was really, really important for the success of the operation. And, they were helping lots of other people too. But for us, I mean, it mattered. The people on our list, I mean, we had thousands of people that were coming forward over that 2-week period asking for help.
So, Jack, how did this sort of system become necessary? I mean, I guess for the listener's sake here, you would assume, with the withdrawal from a place that we've been for 20 years, that the military and the State Department had a plan for getting Americans out, for getting the military out, for getting anybody from the State Department out, and translators and things like that. How did things get this messed up?
Well, that's interesting because I became friends with the guys on the wire. And they were at the embassy to close it down. And the wonderful ambassador there at the time, he refused to leave because this is my favorite part. He wanted to meet the Taliban and welcome them to establish diplomatic relations. And I just said, what? He'd be killed in 2 minutes. And they said, yeah. And they didn't have a plan. And this is where Russ and we found this out during the time. He stayed so long that they had to trade all the biometric data of every American citizen, SIV holder, anybody. If you built a toilet at Bagram Air Force Base, the Taliban had their information and started hunting all these people. And so it was a desperate scramble to get all these people. And I mean, our reputation just kept building and building and building. And thankfully, Russ posted on Facebook what we were doing, and someone reached out to him. I'll let him tell it, but that's how it happened. And it was just literally the lieutenant colonel at the JOC at HKA called me one night and said, "Who are you?" And I said, "I'm nobody. I really said I'm just a drunk in Sicily helping out on orders of 2 generals." And I mentioned their names. He goes, "Whatever you need, you got it, buddy." And so I said, thanks. And so from then on, if we sent a team in, they would go grab them. But I'll let Russ tell the story.
I mean, to understand the scope of this too, after we got the first 4 out and their families, which took 24 hours, the general's wife called again and said, "Hey, I've got 24 female special forces, Afghani special forces operatives. We need to get out too. Can you help?" And Jack and I were like, "Yeah." We literally dropped everything, Michael. For 2 weeks, I didn't do any work. I literally sat here. We had a team of like 5 or 6 of us, friends I worked with in politics in D.C., and a couple other friends. And before you knew it, we had kind of like this daisy chain we'd have throughout the day. Jack would be in Sicily, and he'd pass it off to the guys in D.C., and when they were going to bed, they'd pass it off to me in Oregon, right? And by the time we were done, we ended up, helping to get 1,500 people out. But the word spread from that initial group. And, there was one account, I got a call from someone. I'd worked with her mom in a campaign in 1997. And her mom and I were Facebook friends. And she'd seen a posting that her mom had commented on. And she was the comms director, I think, for Congressman Garcia at the time. And so she's like 23 years old, right?
Yeah.
And she reaches out to me. She says, Sarah Carter from Fox News needs help getting a family out. I said, well, okay. Well, and it's a family that had been an interpreter or a driver for her and her husband or something. And it's detailed in the book. And I find out that they had a baby the day that Cabal fell. So The baby was born the day the city fell. It was 5 days old when they reached out to us and they said, "Can you get him out?" Now, you got to imagine the picture that has been painted for the American people is false. This administration lied over and over again about what it was like around that airport. People were getting killed. People were getting shot at. People were getting beaten all day long. I remember calling Jack and saying, "Jack, can we get this family out?" To get a 5-day-old baby out, I can't even imagine how we could do it because all the gates were a nightmare. And so we contacted the team inside. And they said, "Okay, we got an opening." This is usually how it'd go. They got an opening. They dropped a pin and showed me where the opening was at the wall. And we did all of it through WhatsApp and Signal. And so I contacted them and I said, how long will it take you to get here? And I dropped them a pin and they said, it's going to take us 45 minutes. This is the husband, wife, and the 5-month-old. And remember, now they were also in hiding. His brother had been killed right before it fell, and it had his head cut off by the Taliban. So they were being hunted, and they were in hiding at the time. So we knew if they got caught, they were dead. They were not going to survive. And so we get this gate. We never used it before. This pin got dropped in this place on the wall we'd never seen before. And so we sent them. It was the middle of the night. They got there. They had to cross this big open park. And if you can imagine, like Dante's 7, rings of hell.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's the way the airport was. It was just hell on earth outside the walls. And they managed to get unmolested to the gate and got pulled through the gate. Later, we found out the guys inside the wire called that gate Black Gate. Later, we found out, like years later, I think Time Magazine or someone ran an article on it. The Black Gate was the CIA's gate. It was a secret gate, and we were able to get a ton of people through it after that. It was the one gate that I think for most of the time was pretty unmolested and pretty open. But I could not believe we got that 5-day-old baby out. And, that was the way things happened. We would get people added to our lists, and they would get added to our list, and we'd say, okay, can we help this family? And I remember Jan Percival, who's mentioned in the book. Jan and I sat down one day, and we had such a big list. We had to figure out how we could get these people, where we should start and how we should, and we were triaging a list of people. And Michael, this was the toughest part of this whole experience, was there was a list of literally several thousand people, and we're going through and we're moving families. These people will never get their SIV because this guy literally just made toilets or was an electrician on a base. We can't help him. He's not going to get out. And we're moving families, whole families, knowing that they're on the death list.
Yeah.
And I remember I sat there afterwards when Jan and I got done, and I couldn't believe what we'd just been through. Like this idea that we're just deciding who gets to live and who gets to die. And it was all because this administration just failed. This was such an epic fail beyond belief. And they left. All these people had bought into the promise that we made to them that we would be there till the bitter end with them. And the first sign of trouble, we ran. And not just did we run, but we tucked our legs, and bastards got on helicopters and left. The president of Afghanistan loaded up with gold and headed out of town. It's absolutely the fact that no one has paid a price for this nightmare, and that we still have Americans over there is nuts. It blows my mind, actually.
So, you talked about one of the gates there at the airport, and as we all know, obviously there was a huge explosion at one of the gates, and we had Marines killed. Jack, can you walk me through that as you're going through this process to try to get people out of Afghanistan, and that news comes through that bomb went off?
Well, it's interesting. I got a call from one of the generals that I'm very close with. And
retired.
He's retired. Sorry. And he said, "Hey man, they're coming now. You got to pull all your people off." And I said, "Okay, you got it." He says, "You need to tell all the guys on the wall too." So I immediately told all my guys, and they're like, "Well, where are you getting this from?" And I dropped the general's name, and they said, "You got it. We're pulling off." And we knew if I knew in Sicily it was coming, then the whole damn world should have known. And it's in the book as to why the sniper was given the go on taking down the suicide bomber. You got to buy the book to get it to tell, and it'll blow your mind as to why this was allowed to happen. I mean, we knew it was happening, and then when it happened, we had to pull people off, and it was just really bad. And I was actually texting with a Fox producer the entire time this is going down because, as Russ and I discussed, we don't know if what we're doing was legal or illegal, but I wanted Fox News to know that if something does go down, this is what really happened. I was giving them up to date inside the jock at the airport of the numbers. And they were like, how are you getting this? I was like, well, I got people on the inside. And I just remember the picture and the deaths. And I was like, good Lord. It just, they failed. I mean, they failed those Marines. Those 13 servicemen and women should be alive.
Yeah.
But it's disgusting. And to hear them say everything was great, well, pardon my French, they're full of shit. You know, I call John Kirby Baghdad Bob, if y'all remember, because every time he talked, he's just full of shit.
Yeah, it was the hardest. That was one of the hardest things, Michael, was we would get off the phone with these people, and we're literally talking to people on the ground, walking them into the gates, trying to get them to gates. Sometimes we were successful. We made 4 runs with one family over the 2-week period and never able to get them out. We actually sent their story to members of Congress. We delivered it, hand-delivered it. Jan hand-delivered it to the caucus, and trying to get them to move on stuff post the closure. But there's, you know how it is.
Yeah.
What can a Republican Congress do? You know, I mean, and the hardest part about this is, you know, we knew what was going on the ground, and this administration was lying to the American public every single moment of the day.
Yeah. So Russ, I'm curious though, like, what interaction did y'all have with official channels, State Department,
none,
CIA,
none,
any of these people? I mean, did they
Jack,
figure out what
tell
you?
Tell the FBI story.
Yeah.
Okay, so like I said, Russ and I would joke, and I was talking to someone in a secure location, and he's like, I don't care. We'll help get all these people out. If we get in trouble, we get in trouble. And I said, well, they can go pick me up at the train station. I'll gladly go back. And then right after that, I got a text, and the gentleman says, my name is so-and-so. I'm with the FBI. I need to talk to you about what's going on at HKIA. And I went, oh my God, we're in trouble. And I just said, do I know you? And he's like, we need help. We have FBI trained Afghanis stuck and we can't get them out. And they had listened to the administration where they said, oh yeah, you can just drive on up, show your passports, and they'll let you in. Well, that's the most blatant lie I've ever heard. And I was like, dude, and they're literally welding the gates during that night. And I was like, man, it's over with. They're leaving. And so I said, you got to get out of town. And he said, can you get us a helicopter? And I was like, sir, I can't get a helicopter. I'm a civilian in Sicily. I was like, they need to go get the van from the NGOs. And he goes, well, we gave it back. And I said, and I still can't believe I told the FBI this. I go, they need to go hotwire it and steal it, because after tomorrow, it's over with, and who cares? And he just was shocked that I would say that. I go, listen, they're going around decapitating people and raping children. You've got to get them out, and we'll get you out post-withdrawal, which Russ can allude to. But the FBI was begging us for help. And just the night before, we had to get out 152 CIA assets that were stuck there too. And I'm sitting there going,
yeah,
what
Jack has all the
here?
receipts on this. Jack has all the receipts. He's got, you know, all the text messages. It's all, we talk about it in the book. The naivety of the agencies is off the charts. I mean, I think they just believed the official story. And, you know, because they're operating from wherever they are, in whatever safe country they are, and they're just trying to get their people out, right? And it's total collapse. I mean, there might have been, Michael, one gate where you could drive up, and we brought a family to that gate, but it was not, it was controlled. There was, like, you got to understand, each gate had like Taliban guarding the gate. You couldn't get past the Taliban. Like, a lot of people could not get past the Taliban, even if they had civs or even if they had American passports. The Taliban would push back. Sometimes they beat them. And, you know, so unfortunately, I think we had better information. I'm sure the administration had this information, but we certainly had better information than the FBI guys that were trying to get their friends out, you know, and their assets. And we definitely had better information. Like the fact that 2 retired generals, senior generals, could not help get their friends out because they couldn't get anybody on the phone at the State Department is absolutely insane. And these are guys that were all these people would die. Like the 4 West Pointers and the 24 special operators, dead on arrival, and their families if the Taliban ever caught them. You know, one of the you know, Afghani West Pointers was a 2-star general in the Afghani army.
You get out of here.
I mean, there's
you couldn't get him out.
We got him out.
Yeah, but I'm saying
the State Department wouldn't return the calls.
I mean, that's the most incredible thing to me in this whole story is like, look, I understand it was a chaotic time for the administration, largely caused by their own failure to plan,
100%,
appropriately. But even at that high level, they still couldn't, through their official channels, get some of these folks out, which I think is just crazy.
Well, the ambassador, in his statement post-withdrawal, said it was people like myself, Russ, our friends that are generals. They said that we caused so much chaos that it would have been an orderly withdrawal if it wasn't for us. And I'm sitting there going, no, asshole, we got him out because you were too worried about being a Minnesota liberal and from Wyzetta getting everyone to meet the Taliban to establish diplomatic relations. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
We tell a handful of the stories, but, in reality, we were able to move about 1,500 people through the wall and got them on planes. So what we do is we'd work with Senator Cotton was amazing. So that first round, the first 4, Mike Lee's team helped us with. And then we got connected with Cotton's office, and Cotton made it a priority. And it was basically our war room. Michael, it became the war room to get everybody out, was Cotton. But, we also worked, Congressman Mark Green was great. There were a number of congressmen that really, really stepped up, and members of Congress, like senators. I mean, Cotton was the one. Like, I would bend over backwards for Cotton. If he ran for president, I'd probably do everything I can to help him, because he just was such a stand-up guy.
Yeah.
In his office, just we pushed so much information through there, and they just 24 hours a day were working on getting the paperwork done so that those people could get a seat on a plane. And every one of them was vetted. We knew who those people were. Like, we'd pass. They'd take photographs of their stuff. We would forward it on to Cotton. Cotton would make sure they were on, and then we would hand walk them by dropping pins and tell them, you need to go 150 yards to the left. And, we had one family. The guy's like, but the fence is right here. Why can't they just pull me through? I can see the soldiers. Because you got to go to a goddamn gate.
Yeah.
You can't, and this guy never made it out, and neither did his family, because he couldn't follow directions. We tried 4 times with his family. And because the poor guy could not follow directions, his family is still there, if they're still alive. And their house, by the way, was burned to the ground. Like the local imam turned them in to the Taliban. Taliban burned their house to the ground, stole everything they had. And these guys were in hiding in close proximity to the airport. And, we ended up, I remember the last conversation we had with them was burn everything.
It's just tragic.
You got to get rid of everything.
Yeah.
Last conversation. And then they go dark because the phones are gone. All the contacts are gone. And this was a situation. We left so many good people behind. People like, the funny thing is, my brother spent 2 tours in Afghanistan, and they got hit with a roadside bomb when he was down in Helmud, and their interpreter got sucked out the back of the vehicle and dead, just turned into Swiss cheese. Nothing left of the guy. And remember my brother telling me that story. Those interpreters deserve to get out of that country. They gave everything to this country.
Yeah.
To help make that place a better place. And we abandoned all these guys, man. I mean, we abandoned so many people.
Yeah, marked men, right? Like on the kill list for the Taliban, and we just abandoned them.
Yep.
Well, and then, I'm sorry, Michael. One of the things that really drove me crazy was when Peter Meyer and Seth Melton showed up. Now, when they showed up, they shut down the entire operation for 12 to 15 hours. And so we couldn't get anyone out because they wanted to go, show their bravado and everything. And they defied everything. And one of the families that I couldn't get out, the little girl was raped in front of her mother and father, killed. So was her brother. The wife was raped and killed, and the father was beheaded. And I talked to Peter Meyer about this. So people in Michigan, listen up. His only regret is that he checked into command and they forced a security detail, which he said we never needed. I was like, really? You're in chaos, terrorists are everywhere, and you're not going to get that? Come on, man.
So
And
basically,
bringing Seth Melton.
So they were basically pulling security forces off of your mission and ones like it, basically to keep them safe while they're in country, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. 100%. And the amazing thing is, as Peter said, when I talked to him, his two regrets. He goes, Seth Melton is the reason why it was leaked to the press, because the Biden administration and Nancy Pelosi were angry with him and leaked it to the press. And at the same time, Joe Biden asked them to get out his interpreter because he couldn't get the interpreter out. And they did. And I mean, so...
The hardest part about this, especially like this incident with Meyer, was, we had 3 teams, 3 junior officers that were assigned, at least that we worked with, were assigned to coordinate with us to help get people through the gates, right? So they can only get so many people through at a day. And they were literally running back and forth along the gate to along the wall to different gates to get people through. And they'd say, sorry, I'm working another one right now. I will let you know as soon as I get done with this one and can help your team, can help your people. And when they came into the airport, those teams were pulled away from us. We don't know what they did. We think they were working security, but they told us they had.
No, they were. They were.
But they weren't helping us. And so at the end of the day, it meant that there was the end result of Meyer going into the airport and flexing, right, to be a tough guy, which no one's going to call him on, except for Jack, is that, a handful of Afghani families did not get to get out.
About 300 to 400 people could have got out during their 12 to 15 hour time.
Because the one thing we don't get back, is time.
Yeah.
On an operation like this, the one thing you can't create, time's gone, it's gone. And, I remember we had a family we brought 2 people out, and in front they were at the Abbey Gate. This is early on. And then we had another big group of diplomat. What was his role in the government? Do you remember, Jack?
Yeah, he was part of the defense ministry.
Yeah, so he's part of the defense ministry. He was about, I don't know, maybe 40 yards behind the couple that we got out. And they were tired. It was hot. They didn't bring enough water. They didn't bring any food. There's no place to go to the bathroom. I mean, it's God knows this is like this horrible, horrible environment. People are dying in front of you. People are getting trampled. Taliban comes in and beats people and causes a big trample. He literally at one point said, we're going to go home and try to make another run at this tomorrow. And they were only about 50 yards from the gate.
They were literally 7 minutes from freedom.
Yeah.
They ended up getting killed.
Wow.
They didn't make it out.
They didn't make it out.
There's no second chance. That's it.
The women were so much stronger than the men. I hate to say it, to talk bad about it, but the women were like, we're getting the hell out of here. And we got women out all the time, but the men were just like, eh.
It was a very large group. That was a very large group. I think, do you remember how many people were in that group, Jack?
Yeah. What ended up, that was the second day. I got out that morning 19, and it would have been 23, but he went home and he got killed over it.
Yeah. And this is what we discovered, Michael. You hear these stories, and, I love history. I know a lot of people do, but, who survives in the Holocaust camp, right? Who survived the horrors of Nazi Germany? And they talk about the personalities of the type of people that were the survivors. But, we saw it firsthand in Afghanistan. There is most definitely a personality type that survived, and in this case, this government official, he just didn't have what it took to go the extra 50 yards.
Yeah.
It didn't understand the gravity of the situation, thought that there'd be another opportunity for him, and there wasn't. And it's the hardest thing about what Biden did. Biden was trying to make, we all know this, he was trying to make 9/11 celebrations as the 20-year pullout from Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted more than anything to be able to say on 9/11, look what I did, folks. I ended it.
Yeah.
It was a political objective, 110% political objective. And at the end of the day, it cost the lives of untold numbers of Afghanis that supported us during that 20 years. And a lot of American citizens, some of which are still trapped there.
Yeah.
Yeah, which Russ and I were originally approached in spring of 2023 if we would submit everything to Congress. And Russ and I talked to one of the retired generals. Of course, he said, don't give him shit. And Russ and I said, we're not giving him anything because we know that all those hearings, no one's going to get held accountable for anything. And, you know, I wrote this book and worked on it. And then I got reached out to by a former guy in the CIA, one of his assets, and they, can you help get us out a general that is hiding in Pakistan?
Yeah.
He's actively being hunted. And I looked at his documents. I verified everything through my
this
channels.
is only with Jack. This is only within the last few months. Like I'm talking.
Yeah,
3 months,
yeah.
Michael. Yeah.
And he's had to move 5 times. And so I said, okay, I really don't want to do this book if I can get this guy out. So what did I do? I reached out to one of your former guests, the chair of oversight, Mr. Comer. And I said, hey, I will tell you everything. And they go, oh my God, that's so great. Can we make a phone call? I said, that's fine, but I need you to do me a favor. And I said, I need you to get out. I need you to make a phone call to the embassy in Pakistan to help get this guy out because they're actively being hunted by the Taliban. His house got raided the night before. They said no, they couldn't do it. And it's not like I was asking for tickets to, I don't know, the Redskins, but who cares about them, or the Lincoln Center honors or inauguration tickets. I asked to get someone out. You know, their initial response should have been, whatever we can do to help our ally and this general get his family out, we'll do it. In the hypocrisy of the politics of it all, you know, and they said no. And of course, I don't have Russ's demeanor. I just said, get fucked and enjoy your night at Bow Feathers, trying to be cool, or Capitol Hill Club. Fuck you. So thanks, James Comer's staff. I mean, I'm irrational, but we're dealing with life and death here, you know?
Yeah. So again, the book is Failure of Leadership. It's going to ship, I think, in, is it June, guys?
June 1st.
June 1st. You can pre-order it, failureofleadership.org. Guys, I'll give it to each of you here. Russ first, to close us out. If people could get away one thing from this book, the story and everything that you guys went through trying to get folks out of Afghanistan, what would it be?
Yeah, I think I would say this. You know, this is a testament to the greatness of the American people, right? This whole situation. You had government completely fail. You had the State Department completely drop the ball. You had military leaders, you know, like Milley, who literally just stood back and didn't say anything when he knew this was a disaster, right? To close all the airfields except for HKIA was stupid. With all of the problems associated with this, the one thing that happened was the American people stepped up. Thousands and thousands of American people stepped up. Servicemen, former servicemen who had served in theater, people like Jack and I, but thousands of Americans stepped up to try to make a wrong right. And that's quite a testament to the character, I think, of the American people.
Yeah.
And, you know, we don't wait for government to do things when they fail. You know, if there's a flood in town, everyone comes together and starts packing sandbags and putting them in the streets. This is what we do, and it's part of the American character. And I'll say, you know, of in my life, all the relationships I built through politics, and you know, Michael, you and I worked together, you know, a long time ago. You build all these relationships, and it's a very rare situation when you get to use your relationships to really, really help people.
Yeah.
And when Jack called me and we saw the results of getting, I'm getting a little bit choked up, getting the first 4 out, it was very meaningful. And I counted a blessing to be able to help the people we were able to help. I wish we could have helped more. At the end of the day, you know, I ended up raising a bunch of money and we put together a project and we set up 5 rat lines and got another 1,500 out after the fall. And we just closed 2,000. Yeah. And we just closed that project down about 8 months ago, you know, and it was led by a former retired general. And, and it's a fantastic project. And maybe one day we'll write a book about that.
Yeah.
You know, when we'd essentially smuggle people out.
Yeah.
And hide them and pay to hide them. But we ran out of money, you know, just there wasn't enough, you know, people just kind of lost interest in it. But we were able to help a lot more. And I count it as a blessing, but it's really a testament to the character of the American people.
Yeah. Jack, I'll give you the final word here on the book, the story. What is it that you hope people take away from all this?
Well, just the understanding, exactly what Russ said. You know, we weren't on Fox News like some people saying we're doing this, we're doing that. We just put our heads down and we did the work because we're patriots.
Yeah.
And, you know, when retired generals, they ask me to do something, I do it. You know, it's kind of like I'm doing right now and some of the work I'm doing in the Middle East. You gotta step up and be a patriot. And that's the American way. And, you know, it is one of those things that I said that when it's my time to go and I stand at the gates and I'm being judged, this is going to get me in. I mean, I should be in hell, but this is saving 3,700 people, give or take, 17 during the withdrawal, 2,000 post-withdrawal. We did the right thing, and it's my card in, as I say.
Yeah. That should be a VIP pass to the front of the line at the pearly gates. That's for sure. Jack,
for something, yeah.
Jack, Russ, thank you so much, for joining me, telling the story. God bless you for doing what you did. Again, that book is Failure of Leadership. You can pre-order it at failureofleadership.org. Guys, thanks for joining us.
It's not on Amazon because, thank you very much. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Appreciate it, buddy.
See you guys.
I mean, what a fascinating interview. Just incredible stuff. I mean, what a tragedy.
Yeah, and it's important not to forget it. It was under Joe Biden. It was under his watch, and it's all on him.
It's a tragedy. It's also super, super important that these stories get told, and I'm sure there's many more. And we've heard ones, and we've heard little anecdotes from people that we know of what went down during that time. And but to like put more color and more story around the failure of Joe Biden and the State Department and everything they did, and this terrible plan of the withdrawal, giving up Progrum and all of that stuff. And you see that like it isn't just tactics, it isn't just like pieces on a chessboard, but there are real people who are impacted by this. Literally thousands of people, and people lost their lives because of what Joe Biden did.
Yeah, it's an important story. You may wonder why we keep covering it.
Yeah,
but we're going to keep covering because nobody else will, and it's important to us. With all that being said, McDaniel?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to say real quick, for those of you who are listening on you or watching on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe.
That's right.
Or else they're going to beat me again. Please. No, we need the camera directly, Wolf. I need to make a direct appeal to the audience.
We're going to beat him regardless.
Or if we get enough likes and comments and subscriptions, we'll beat him.
Yeah. That's right.
The audience decides.
The audience decides. Yeah, just comment down below. It helps the metrics regardless.
Yeah.
If you hit the thumb down.
Vote below, beat him or not beat him.
If there are, I pledge my word. If there are less than 50 comments on this video, we will beat McDaniel.
We'll beat him.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like maybe
ones.
the soap in the sock.
Yeah.
And if there are more than
Code
50,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, still soap in the sock.
Yeah.
Either way.
They've attached electrodes for every downvote. Please don't do it. Please. You think I'm joking? They're all laughing.
Direct to the genitalia as we do it here at the Ruthless Friday program.
But honestly though, liking, comment, and subscribing actually will up us in the rankings, and you've done it a couple times already, and we've seen the metrics go up, and we really appreciate that.
Yep.
That's awesome. Listen, it's a pleasure to have you here, pal. It's nice for everybody to see you here for the first time. And it's some good stuff.
And you might never see me again.
He brought great stuff. I mean,
he's a natural.
He's a natural.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. All right. Well, Smug, I think we did it.
I think so. Absolute banger of an episode. Gentlemen, thank you so much to our guests. Wonderful insight. And a reminder, folks, vote right now for the championship of Hack Madness. Go to my profile on Twitter or X and vote. So, until next time, minions, keep the faith, hold the line, and own the libs. We'll see you on Tuesday. Stay ruthless.